All right. In 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And now we're live. How are you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing good. I feel like I should introduce you.
No, you don't need to. I think most people know me.
What if we don't know you?
Okay, you can introduce me.
What if there's a stranger in like Germany? And they're like, who is this woman? He never introduced her. Why does my German accent sound like Japanese?
It does, kind of. Yeah.
A little racist
you need to work on that.
Well, in case they don't know who you are, you're Laura G. Like
Lord
a rapper.
You can't say my last name, huh?
Yeah, I can. Guardado. Why not? Well, it's going to be on the title.
Well, I mean, like, pronouncing wise, like, you struggle with
Did I
that.
say it weird?
You did it okay.
Or let's try that. Watch you say it first.
I can't say it that good.
But it's your it's your own last name.
I know, but Guardado.
Say it one more time.
Guardado.
All right, you ready?
Yeah.
Guardado.
That's good.
Is it pretty good?
It's pretty good.
We're going to play this episode for your family or someone. Or someone that's like severely Hispanic. And that way they can judge me. Like, he didn't roll it right.
Yeah, you might want to show it to like my dad. I think he'll be a good person to critique you.
I don't know. What if he gets mad at me? It's like, you don't know it by now? Damn it, I'm sorry. I feel like I speak decent Spanish for a white guy.
Yeah, you do. I feel like you do pretty well. You know
so?
all the like bad words that I don't know.
I don't know any bad word. Well, I know a few bad words.
Yeah,
I don't know Spanish in the sense of like the way you know Spanish. And you don't even give yourself credit for knowing Spanish that well.
Yeah.
But I feel like I know, like if someone said, say this, I could repeat it back pretty good.
Yeah.
But like I don't like have anything memorized.
Yeah.
Did you know Spanish when you were a kid?
No,
No?
I did not.
No.
Mm-mm. My parents both spoke Spanish in the home, but they didn't really talk it to us.
Did you ever take a Spanish class?
Yeah, I did.
When?
In high school and college.
That's the end of your story. Did it not go well?
I was answering your question.
I know, but this is a conversation. What do you
want me to tell you what my teacher's name is?
Sure, whatever you
I don't remember.
Did you do good in the class?
I think I did decent. I've always done like pretty well in school, so like I think that it was kind of easy.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I don't think I ever like really retained it. I think when I started working with people that spoke Spanish and I was trying to understand them, then I was able to kind of learn it that way. So like more so like, I guess, hands-on.
That's how you learned Spanish, was just like being forced to, because when I remember you've always been, to me, good at Spanish, but whenever you started working and then you had a position where you needed to speak Spanish more, it seems like you were saying like, I feel like my Spanish is getting better.
Yeah, definitely. And I think I like read people pretty well. Yeah, people.
I like to read some papers.
I like to read some papers.
Did you read people well? So like if someone's speaking Spanish to you and you don't know what they're saying, you can kind of guess like based off the way they're...
Yeah, like I think that's kind of how it started. Like even now I can just kind of watch people's body language. And of course, like I know some like what the words mean.
Yeah.
But the way they're talking about it, even in English, like sometimes when people don't tell me things, I pick up on what they're trying to tell me before they actually tell me. It's a weird thing. It's hard to explain.
Do you think you could do it with other languages other than Spanish?
Probably not.
No? You don't think if like a Korean lady was like, you don't think you could read her body language? Or do you think, Korean people just sound angry all the time. Have you noticed that? Do you know anyone that speaks like, or not, I don't want to single out Koreans, any sort of Asian language? It's just like, it's just the way it's spoken is like really aggressive. And so they could be like, hey, I really like your hat. But it's like, hang on, look, I got a hat. And they're like, oh, like it seems like they're like upset at you. But they're really just trying to compliment you.
I've never noticed that so much. I don't know, but I think that I definitely can read somebody's body language, like in the sense if they needed help with something. I think no matter what language that is, I could kind of understand.
Like if they're pointing to a fire and they're like, no, 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 no. You're like, is there your baby in that fire? Like,
yeah.
Would you do that?
Yeah. Like there's been times like when I didn't understand Spanish very well. And I remember somebody telling me like a sad story about like their daughter. And I didn't really like know the details of like what happened necessarily. But like I started to kind of pick up on like, oh, like she's sad because she either misses her daughter, something's happening with her daughter. And the more that I would kind of listen, then I could kind of like pick it up as to, okay, like this is what she's going through over time, you know?
Yeah, well, that makes sense. But do you think part of it is because you pick up on little words? Like you're not blind to Spanish, so you know some of it.
Yeah.
But if you knew nothing, which is why I keep asking about a different language, do you think you could do the same thing? and replace it with any language, right? Whether it's German or some foreign Native American language, do you think that you would still pick up? Maybe let's remove the burning building, right? Because we could all figure that one out. If you were just sitting down and someone was talking to you, do you think you can go like based off what they're like moving, the way they're speaking? Do you think you can figure out what's going on?
I think I could get a sense to reading the person.
Mm-hmm.
I do feel like, say like French or Italian, like they have certain words that are similar to Spanish.
Mm-hmm.
So I could pick up on that, but if it was like German or something else, it might be a little bit more difficult. But
Really?
I think that I could probably read somebody pretty well. I don't know if I could understand everything that they were saying, but I've never tried it.
Yeah, we're getting kind of crazy. Yeah. Huh? Like what?
I'm like, if you want me to like find somebody online, I can try it out.
Sorry, I'm just adjusting that real quick.
Oh, you're good.
Yeah, I feel like we'll never be in a position where we're like, if only we could just read body language. I feel like there'll always be a place. I took Spanish, I think, in my freshman year for sure. And I thought like it'd be a smart thing to do, which it is, right?
Yeah.
Like in New Mexico.
Yeah.
But I remember thinking like, I don't know what was wrong with me. I was a weird freshman, I know that. And I was at Cruces High, and I had a teacher, and I won't say his name because he did pass away, but he was a really, really nice guy. And anyone that went to Cruces High, as soon as they hear that, they're going to know exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Because he was a good, really, really sweet guy. I was like a weird kid, and I remember trying to fit in a lot. Mm-hmm. And I used to get bullied in that class a little bit, like not like severely, right? Just these two kids who were also white, which is weird. They were like making fun of me for being in the class. And I remember they were like, well, like, why did you come in here? We came in here because we had to. And I'm like, well, like I kind of was like, well, I just came here because I had to too.
Yeah.
And I think I went into the class wanting to learn Spanish. But because of those kids, and at the time I wasn't like fully like secure with who I was as a person. And I was like, yeah, well, I'm here because I have to too. Yeah. And so I didn't take it very seriously. And they would like always like, it was weird. I remember at one point they learned some Spanish, like, and they were like using it to make fun of me. And I'm like, you guys are silly. Like, but they were kind of rude.
Yeah.
But I remember I started acting a little crazy in that class. And so I drove that teacher crazy, like really, really bad. And he would just always tell me like Will, like are you even taking this seriously? Like da da da. And I would just make fun of him, and like it was just pretty bad. He hated I don't think teachers are allowed to admit those things, but yeah, you could tell he's like, fuck, Will's here. Because I wouldn't always go to class. I would skip sometimes. So I'm sure he was like, thank God, like today's gonna be peaceful. Yeah. But when he would see me, he was like, welcome to class, Will. And it was like one of those moments. Yeah. And he passed away while he was my teacher. And so like we were in class one day, and like they came in like, he's sick. And then they came in, like we had a substitute, and then they came in like a week later, and they're like, he passed away. And I felt so bad. I was like, God, I gave that guy like so much crap. Like it was pretty bad. And so I never took Spanish again.
It's his fault, right?
No, it was my fault.
Well, I mean, it's weird how people project though. Like obviously the kids that you're talking about didn't feel comfortable about themselves being in there. So instead, like they kind of projected that onto you, it sounds like. Yeah,
I think no one taught me when I was young that it's okay to not fall into that thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's okay to be like, cool, like, well, I am here, like, to learn. And so like, don't bother me. And I think a lot of kids are like that. I think that if those same kids talked to anyone else in the classroom the same way they talked to me, they would have convinced those other kids not to take the class very seriously as well. Because it was like, it's pretty common during that age group, middle school to almost all of high school, I would say, until maybe like senior year when you're kind of maturing. Even then, you're not that mature, but I think there's this weird thing where it's like you want to fall into what everyone else is doing. You do small things to stand out, but only if it's like cool as well. Yeah. And so I think it was just two kids that maybe they really didn't like the class, or maybe they just thought it was cool to say that, and like, I don't know why. But when I look back at it, I do think I should have taken that class more seriously, because when it comes to jobs and stuff and different things, like they really, really care if you're bilingual. And even if it wasn't for work, like we live in New Mexico. Even if you didn't live in New Mexico, like reggaeton is so popular now, the Hispanic culture has grown so much in all the United States that it's like it would be a good skill to have. Yeah. And I could still learn.
Yeah, you should take another class.
Maybe.
Or Rosetta Stone.
You can be my Rosetta.
I'm down.
Spanish for Dummies? You think they have that?
They probably do. I can get you something on Amazon and
Did you take a foreign language? You say you took Spanish, right?
Yeah, just Spanish.
You never took one of the other ones?
Mm-mm.
I remember everyone wanted to take
French?
yes, because you got to go to like Paris, right? Or am I tripping?
I don't know.
Where the hell is Paris? It's in France, right?
Yeah, it is, but
Okay.
I don't remember hearing like
There
that
was
you
a
get to
school
go
trip.
to Paris.
Yeah, at Cruces there was. Maybe even at Aniate, but there was if you took French class, they took an end of the semester or year trip to France. And it was like a big school trip. So everybody wanted that class. I think Spanish went to Spain. Hopefully they didn't go to Juarez or something.
That would have been cool.
You think so?
I would have been down to go to Derby.
When we were in high school, everyone wanted to go to Juarez, huh?
Yeah.
So you're right. Maybe that would have been cool.
Yeah, that would have been a lot of fun.
I do remember the German class went to Germany, and they would have them practice there what they learned in the class. And so that was part of the reason why I originally wanted to take the French one for that reason, to go on the trip, which I don't know why. Like I didn't, like I think in my freshman year, I was still with my biological family. Maybe I was in foster care, but I definitely didn't have enough money to go on that trip. So I don't know why I thought maybe it would work out. Did you have a big middle school trip?
I don't think so. Well, you know what? I think there was like Washington, D.C. or something like that.
Yeah.
I don't really remember exactly. I think there was for my grade, but I wasn't that interested. I don't know.
Do you remember other people being interested?
Yeah, I
like,
do.
was it a big deal?
Yeah, I kind of do remember that, but I can't remember if it was like people before me or people after me talking about it, or if it was during the time that I kind of want to say it didn't happen for our grade, because I feel like my friends at that time probably would have been like, come on, let's just go. And I would have like been like, okay, you know? So maybe it didn't happen, but I know that at Camino they did have something like that.
They had one at Zia for sure, and it was a New York trip, and I think they went to DC too while they were there.
Yeah.
And I don't remember what it was for, but I remember everyone was going, and it was like a big deal, and everyone talked about it. But and I hope they fix this, because they definitely didn't do it back then, is they didn't really acknowledge the kids that couldn't afford to go.
Really?
Like at all, because I was that kid. That's how I know. And so it's like, I remember everyone being excited to go, and people, when you're a kid, you don't really think of everything. People were talking to me as if I was excited, like, hey, like, are you going to go? As if it was an option for me. And some of those people knew that I didn't have money. They knew that type of home. But I think when you're that young, you don't understand what that means yet.
Think about that.
They think, like, well, maybe they could still go somehow. Mm-hmm. So I remember people asking me about it. I was like, I don't know. And I remember flipping it into like, I don't want to go.
Yeah. And
I did want to go. But I remember thinking it's way easier to be like, well, I'm just not even interested then, and like I don't have any money. You know what I mean? Or anything weird. But the teachers and the faculty, I don't remember. And maybe they did, and I don't remember. But I don't think, and if anyone's listening to this that had been, and they do remember this, correct me. But I don't think anyone came up to me and asked me about it, or it was even addressed like in a group setting where it's like, hey, not everyone can go, so let's make sure that if you are going, like, don't be rude kind of thing or something. But everyone, even some of my friends that were also not very, like, doing off very well went. I don't know if they got like funding or something, but yeah, they all went on this New York trip, and I remember they came back and everyone talked about it because like they all flew together. It was like a huge event, and they all had pictures. And this is back when it was like actual pictures, not on the phone. And yeah, they were just like telling, they're like, Duff, Tyler, this kid Tyler Allred. I hope he hears this podcast, because I missed that guy. Like, I haven't talked to him in so long. If somehow this video gets to him, hit me up, Tyler. He was so cool. He's one of my friends, and he was like a cool kid, but he was also nice. He was a nice, cool kid. And he, I think it was him, but they're like, dude, Tyler Allred threw up on the plane because he got like plane sickness or something. Oh, and like I was like, what?
Sickness.
Like, everyone knew, like,
plane sickness,
whatever it's called. Yeah,
I know what you meant.
Got sick of planes during the ride. But that was always like, that was like the big thing. Like, you know, when something happens, like everyone tells everyone, even though they weren't even there, dude, Tyler Allred, I saw it.
Like, it's kind of like a rumor or something.
That was like the big thing.
Event.
Yeah, so like, dude, Tyler Allred fucking could not breathe on the flight. They gave him a bag, bro. Like, you know, they like make you breathe in, like, like when you're hyperventilating. What is that called?
I think just hyperventilating to breathe in.
Well, I think hyperventilating is like when you can't breathe, or is that hyperventilating when you breathe into the bag?
Well, you're hyperventilating and you're breathing into the bag to kind of help like soothe that, I think, right?
So is there a name for the process of breathing into a bag?
I don't think so. I don't know.
Like there is.
Maybe a nurse would know, or a doctor.
I know. Damn it.
Know.
We need a nurse in here.
I think we can just say breathing into the brown bag.
Yeah. He was breathing into the brown bag. I was just thinking about that. I'm like, what if there's like a cool or like a official name that I'm not using? But yeah, that was pretty much it. Like they came back, there was a trip, they all talked about it, and we kind of moved on from it. But it was like like 6th grade, everyone was talking about like, I can't wait to get to 8th grade.
to do
to go on the trip, and that was like a big deal.
That's crazy. You think that like people or in the school system would think about that, people that aren't able to, afford it, or they, maybe have some type of funding resource, or even like an incentive, like, hey, if you sell a certain amount of this, like this was going to go to your trip kind of thing.
I think they did.
Yeah.
Maybe
fundraisers, I guess, or and stuff like that, car washes, like things like that, I feel.
Yeah. Well, I think also just acknowledging that some kids, I don't think they should do special treatment, right? Because when you hear stuff like that, people's first thoughts are usually like, well, they should just not do those trips. And I would have felt worse if that was the case. I think there should be a trip. I think someone should have inspired me to want to do something to go. Because I didn't think it was an option at all. Like, I didn't even look into options because I was like, that's just not my life. Like, when I get home, we're eating ramen and we're like, you know what I mean? Like, we're struggling to do stuff, and like our house is like really old and there's weeds everywhere, and there's like, it just wasn't a nice neighborhood, and everyone's on drugs and drinking. And so it didn't seem like an option.
Yeah.
It didn't seem like I couldn't do it either. Like, that feeling of like, I can't accomplish that. Like, or that feeling of like, that'll never be me.
Like when you're kind of sad about it almost?
Yes. Almost like accepting that it's impossible. That wasn't me. I never did that, right? Because it's not my personality. I'm not the type of person that really accepts that something's impossible. At least not anymore. But when I was a kid, it wasn't that I was accepting it's never going to happen, like I can't do it. I didn't even know I had the option to try. And so like that's what it was. It would have been nice if someone told me like, hey, poor kids can go too. They just may not get parents like money from their parents, but hey, why don't you come over to my house this weekend and like me and you will do the car wash or something, like he said, or we'll go door to door and sell this, or we'll ask. How about we just ask? Who doesn't want to send a kid to New York? You don't think if there was a poster up and they said, hey, Will wants to go to New York, and it had like my smiley little 8th grade face on it. Like, how many people would be like, we got to get this weird dorky ass kid like to fucking New York. Like, and they would have donated. But it was just like, I didn't know that any of those things were options, and I didn't know to do them, or I was never motivated to like be put in a position where I could get a good outcome from it. And so like I always look back on that and I think like I'm pretty sure they don't do that anymore, huh? I feel like our society is pretty progressive, and I feel like they extra super duper care about stuff now. I think so.
I would think so.
They definitely didn't back then. There wasn't like an emphasis on that stuff.
I think we should go to the schools after this
and check.
Yeah, and just make sure and tell them.
What does a nerdy kid even look like? Like anymore?
I don't know. I haven't been to school in a long time.
Because nerdiness is the cool thing now. Like the way nerdy kids used to dress.
You think?
Yes. Have you ever seen 21 Jump Street?
Yeah.
Do you remember the scene where Channing Tatum and Jonah Hill is like at school, and they're like loser to some kid, and like what? And before they went to school, he was like, you got to one strap it, like the one strap backpack, because it's the cool thing to do. And then they get there, Jonah Hill's like, dude, everyone's two strapping it. Should I two strap it? Like,
oh yeah, I do. Yeah, I don't even know anymore.
Do you remember that? One strap was a cool thing. And then it turned into like, both of them was cool for guys. I don't know how it was for girls. And then they would pull the thing and it would sit high up on your back. And you would pull it tight, especially if you wore a tall tee, which I did. And that was like the cool thing for a while. So my point, and then like everyone wore baggy clothes, and the tight clothes were like the gothic kids, you know what I mean? Or like the weirdos. And now it's the opposite. We all like, it's more of a common thing to wear tighter clothes. Yeah. So I feel like if me and you went undercover, like, or like even if we didn't, we just walked in, like I feel like we wouldn't even know what a nerdy kid looked like.
Yeah, that's true. We'd be oblivious.
Maybe we don't have any kids. And we don't have any nephews.
Maybe some of our friends that have kids. We have nephews.
But do we have friends that have kids or nephews that are high school age?
We're about to.
Who?
I think Jess. Little Mikey's, I think, going to be in high school soon.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. We'll have to get him to film.
Yeah.
I guess everyone has like cameras or phones with cameras on them.
With what's happening with these trips. But back to that, I had a question for you. So when do you think you noticed like I'm not going to have like money for this, or like the trip thing? Like, did you just know always?
I just knew. Yeah.
Like, did you ever ask your mom like, hey, can I do this? And she said no?
No, never. I would never ask her because there was no point. For multiple reasons. Either she was with a guy that wasn't very nice, and asking her meant her asking him, which meant bad things. Mm-hmm. Or even if she wasn't with someone, which was very rare, by the way, it was just like, it would be like asking your grandma to like MMA fight with you. like, hey, grandma, I'm trying to like get really good at MMA. Like, that's a stupid question to ask. Grandma's not training with you MMA. She's just not doing it.
She could.
She could. But could you picture in your head you walking up to your grandma right now and saying, hey, like, I'm trying to get really good at this. Like, do you mind you mind holding the mitts for me? Yeah. Like, you could do it.
Like, you would maybe think about other people that would be more fitting for that role.
The way the grandma wouldn't even be capable of that, even if she put in effort. It was the same feeling metaphorically that my mom would have. Like, she was very rarely sober or very rarely happy or like very rarely in a point where she could leave the house and put in effort into anything else other than what she was already doing. Mm-hmm. So it would have been a huge letdown, or it would have been an obstacle, like an extra obstacle, like it would have created some new issue. And so it just wasn't worth it. Like, I never thought like, oh, there's a chance I could go. It was always, I knew I was never going to go. I would do some daydreaming sometimes about things, like maybe for that New York trip we're talking about, like maybe I did for that. Mm-hmm. But I was a daydreamer a lot. I've talked about this a little bit on a previous podcast, but not too much in depth. Mm-hmm. I would daydream. This is going to be so funny and silly. I would daydream about a girl I would like in middle school. High school, not so much. Elementary, for sure. I started liking girls really young. And so, but I remember.
How old?
I don't even know. Like
3? Just kidding.
Oh, yes. Yeah. She was horny
toddler.
little 3-year-old running around. No, young.
They say puberty actually starts when you're 6 years old.
I believe that I liked people younger, but I didn't know. Like I remember having a crush on a girl when I was like 4 or 5, like, or at least young. Yeah. But it wasn't like the way that I would like have a crush on you. Oh, it's not bad. No, it just wasn't like, it was innocent. Like, it wasn't that way. Yeah. Anyways, you're throwing me off my point. Sorry. What was my point anyways?
Your point was
the
daydreaming about all these girls.
I had terrible self-esteem. I wasn't daydreaming about all these girls. You're like, those whores? You're daydreaming about whores? Maybe I was like 10. And they would, jealous. I would meet, let's say, and I'll go with middle school, but this also for sure happened in elementary school. There's always more so in middle school or in elementary, it was the two popular people. In my opinion, this is how it was. In middle school, it was the two popular people, and then there was also like kind of popular people. And in high school, there was definitely, because it gets so much bigger, it was popular cliques. Mm-hmm. And then maybe there is a popular person in the whole school, but I didn't feel that way in high school. In middle school, though, and in elementary, I would find myself liking a girl. And it wasn't always the popular girl. Sometimes it was just a girl that was more popular than me. And I would daydream about like how good I would treat them. Like, like not like in a sexual way at all. Like, I would just be like I don't get, you know how like there'd be drama, right? And I'll make up names like Kelly and Dave. Like, Kelly and Dave are dating, and I really like Kelly. And Dave isn't so nice. He's kind of like, he hangs out with his boys and shit. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I'm like, why does he do that? She deserves so much more. Like, she'd be my best friend, and I would like climb a mountain to like get something for her and bring it down. Like, I was just like, it was like an emotional, like dramatic kid.
Would you actually like picture it in your head?
I would picture me instead of that person.
Oh, okay.
Which I think wasn't healthy. Like, it's definitely.
Well, I mean, I think it's when you're that young, it's okay.
But I would picture me like as them, like, like I looked like them, but it was me.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, but it was like me in their body almost.
Did you ever like get pictures and like cut out the guy's head and put your head on?
That would be hilarious. I wish I did, because that would make the story so much better. No,
that would have been cool.
It wasn't psychotic. But here's the thing. What would you do if this is like the point in our relationship where you're like, oh.
I'm like, oh dear.
Oh, this is who I'm dating. No, I wouldn't do that, but I would want to. Hold on, let me explain this. I didn't say that right. Like, I would want to, like, God, I don't even know where I'm going with this story. All right, here's how I
have Will Palmer blushing.
Here's how I look at it. Is back then when I was doing all this, it felt normal. It felt like the right thing to do. It didn't feel creepy. Do you ever see shows where someone's really creepy?
Like you?
Yes, like this one, like this podcast. No, I'm just kidding. Have you ever seen a show where they're really creepy and they don't even know they're creepy? And sometimes they're adults. They're like 40 years old. Yeah. And you're like, oh, they think it's okay to say these things because they don't know. I always wonder how did they get to that point? Like, they're so old. You know what I mean? Like, where did this all start? I think it starts kind of how it started with me.
Yeah.
Because mine was innocent, and I didn't do. Some people probably would, right? There's kids in this world that take it so far that maybe follow them home. That's how all that stalker stuff happens, right? But when I look back on it, I think that's how it starts: is being unpopular, being unwanted, feeling inadequate, seeing someone who is popular, who does have the girl, who is adequate, and isn't doing certain things well, and you daydream. And I think, and I've read some things where it says people that overly daydream, like it's not good for your health, like to do that, to be lost in your head. You need to be present, right? You need to have a good imagination, which I for sure had, but you can't be doing stuff like that. And so as I grew in life, right, and life took me places, I grew away from that, and I grew more confident, and that was never an issue past high school, right?
Yeah.
But I do look back, if I'm being honest and vulnerable, right?
Yeah.
By even talking about it, I think that's how it starts. And it starts from just this weird kid feeling a certain way. So all those people that you see that are, some of them are murderers, some of them have done terrible things, some of them are not any of those things, they're just awkward. It all started from these kids, I think, that just weren't treated like certain people. And so they created these other worlds where what they're doing is normal. And as someone who grew up bad, I think it's important that I recognize that and talk about it, because I think that is where it starts. It's an incentive and a reminder for people to treat other people kindly, even if you don't get them. You know what I mean? Even if you don't understand them, like try to include them and stuff.
Do you think it's kind of like proper socialization when kids are young? Like that's what's important?
What would you count as proper socialization? What are you asking, I guess?
I guess like sometimes people struggle when they're younger to socialize.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're younger, like you can have like, you know, like therapists or like, you know, things like that in school where like maybe they have a condition that causes them to have trouble like socializing, or like even a condition. I know autism is one of them. Do you think that might be like something that people should probably put more emphasis on in the school system, is making sure that, you know, everybody's understood more, and that, you know, when they have trouble being uncomfortable, that instead of being looked at as weird, they're able to be more social and able to feel more accepted.
Are you asking me if I think counseling is a solution to that? If more of that, like supervision?
Well, that, and I guess counseling, but more so like in like elementary school, like now, like they have like speech therapy, they have occupational therapy, they have like therapies in school to help with certain behavioral therapy. And now I think they're focusing a little bit more on socialization, but I don't think the emphasis is really there. I wonder if kind of adding that would be something that would be helpful for kids too.
I think it would. I think there's some of that stuff. There was kids that went to my school that were autistic. There was the special needs class. Did you have that and stuff? Mm-hmm. Those kids were super cool, by the way. The weird thing is those kids were a little protected. Maybe I'm not talking about everyone, right? We've seen videos with people that are bullying people that are like obviously like impaired or have some sort of disability or something going on, and it should never happen, right?
Yeah.
So it happens. I remember the special needs class being admired. I think everyone liked them. There was a couple of cool kids, and I won't give out their info, but they were like one of the kids was autistic, and he would always tell me about the girl he was dating. And he was always dating a different autistic girl, or like a different special needs girl.
That was diagnosed with autism.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the autistic, right?
I think that's how you. Well,
yeah.
I think it's.
That's like saying someone that is an alcoholic or is someone that abuses substance abuse disorders. So yeah, we're not like, I'm not trying to be like scientific or anything, but yeah. Well, this person referred to themselves as autistic. That's why I'm saying this. Yeah. And he was proud of it. No one else cared. He would date a different person in the special needs class, and he would always tell, I don't know if he was really dating them, but he would tell me like, yeah, I got Sarah and I got this girl, and never mind, I'm over her. I'm with Sabrina now. Like
really?
I'm thinking about dating both those girls. And even the other kids that were outside of that class were super nice to them. My point was that there's the side that I almost feel like the smelly kid or the weird kid or the socially awkward kid is treated worse because they don't know, right? People think like, well, we'll get it together. Get it together. Why are you acting like this? As opposed to something that's a little more obvious, I think people tend to respect it a little bit more, at least where I went to school.
Yeah, and I think even like back then for us, now I think it might be different, but like ADD and ADHD, like I think at that time we didn't really understand it as much, you know, we like, or teachers maybe didn't understand it was like the troublemaker, the person that's always, you know, like talking in class or that kind of thing. But, you know, there was more kind of to it. I think now probably, I'm sure it's different, but I don't know.
Did you not see, how was that dynamic in your school?
I'm trying to think. Like kids that didn't socialize or
would you consider yourself popular in middle school and high school? You'll be surprised how many people say no to that. Like that, but that to me were popular. But
yeah.
So it's not that weird.
So I don't know. I feel like in elementary school, so I went to Hillrise and then Desert Hills got built. So then I ended up going to Desert Hills starting 3rd grade and then Camino and then Oñate. So I kind of feel like I had similar friends throughout my years, but then obviously when I changed schools, I had a different set of friends. I never really like thought about it back then, to be honest.
No.
So I never thought like, oh, I'm popular or I'm not popular, or I wish I could be like with this popular guy, or like.
If I were to talk to someone that knew you from high school or middle school, that for sure was not popular, their self, like right off the bat, they're like, hey, I was not popular.
Yeah.
What do you think they would say about you?
That's so crazy. I don't know. I guess popular, I guess. Because I was in cheerleading and stuff like that. So I feel like people knew who I was.
Yeah.
Yeah. But like, I don't think I was like the most popular person, you know?
Yeah. No one's really even the people that I think were the popular people.
Yeah.
If I asked someone else that went to school with me, they may think it was someone else.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't have to be the same person. But I guess I'm trying to understand the dynamic of like, what effect does it have on other people that are, and we're obviously speaking in generalities, but someone that isn't popular like at all? Because to me, I've never considered myself the popular, same thing that you're talking about, but I was literally like majorly unpopular, and then I got kind of popular. And I was never like super duper popular.
Yeah.
And I was just kind of popular, right? But I know the difference between the friends I made when I was popular and the friends that I made when I was unpopular. There's a different dynamic.
Yeah.
And do you think that you ever felt like a transition, or do you think that you kind of had your same group of friends and it was like very similar?
I feel like I always kind of relied on connections, like for whoever I was connected with at the time. There's people that, like, say when I was doing cheerleading, that like I connected with, and there's people that I didn't connect with. And
like on the squad kind
on
of
the
thing?
squad. And there was nothing against the people I didn't connect with. It's just the people that I connected with more, I continued a friendship with them. And then I was a cheerleader in high school. I just did it my freshman year, and it was kind of the same thing. And then I was like, okay, I want to do something new. I ended up meeting like a new set of friends, or getting closer to more people that I felt more connected to then. And so that's kind of what it's like been based on, I guess, for during my school. And then like, I feel like most of those people I'm kind of still friends with now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's probably a few that I'm not as close with, but it was just kind of like, I don't know. I just feel like for me, when it comes to friendships, it's always been, do I feel like emotionally connected to them? Whether they're the most popular person or whether they're not. I think that's kind of how I felt in high school too, or when I was younger.
Yeah.
Like, I never felt like I don't want to hang out with this person because they're not popular. And I never felt like, oh, I want to hang out with this person because they're popular and like I'm going to like gain something from it. It was just always kind of like, I feel like I have a good time with this person. I feel connected with them. I get something out of this friendship that like really makes me grow as a person. And so like, I'm going to continue the friendship.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good. I can see you like that. And I can see you being nice. I can see you being popular, but also still being nice to the other people that are unpopular. You've always been like that. You've always been a caring, kind, considerate person. So I can see you being like that even younger.
Yeah. I think it's just like, I've always had that, like, I'm kind of selfless in a way, you know? And so I just kind of want to have a good time. I want people to have a good time. If I feel like I'm connected with somebody, then like I want to continue that connection.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that that's super important. The reason why I'm asking all this is because I guess I'm trying to answer your question honestly, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because you had asked me what I think would help in schools and stuff, and
Yeah.
I wanted to identify there is a difference, and they're just as important, right? I'm not trying to, but I'm referring to my own situation. I think it's not anything that parents can do. Let me change that. It's not anything staff members at a school can do because it's not their responsibility. They're 8 hours, 9 hours a day, sometimes longer, right? Mm-hmm. Sometimes less, depending on the day. Monday through Friday, typical school day. But they have their own kids, some of them. They're managing a million different personalities throughout the year. So I do think that there's a teacher's responsibility is to be present with the students, give their best effort to that, and educate, right? Yeah. And if something is in front of you, then you can do your best to correct it. But those people that were rude to me weren't rude to me in front of teachers because they would have gotten in trouble. Mm-hmm. So I think teachers can't really affect it. I think it's people. Mm-hmm. And when I'm referring to the human interactions that we all have. And so when I really want to answer your question honestly, I think the magical answer would be just be kinder, right?
Yeah.
And so then I think, well, what do we do to be kinder? Then I think, and the reason why I took back the adult part or the parent part is because I think parents set the tone for their kids to be nice, right?
True, yeah.
And so it's like, how do we get kids to be nice to each other? Maybe if the parents are nice to each other. Yeah. And so typically, and again, I'm speaking in generalities, the kids that were mean to me, they didn't have nice parents, right? Mm-hmm. And so it was like, not all of them, right? And there's obviously levels to this, right?
Right, like
some of them didn't have parents at all. It's specifically boys that are missing dads are the worst. There's something about boys without dads that, as a boy without a dad, that ended up like growing up to like at one point kind of mimic some of these behaviors, like the kids in the Spanish class.
Yeah,
I can personally vouch for that. There's something weird there. But it's like and the moms that figure that out, because there are moms that have sons that are really well behaved, those people deserve like double high fives and like extra stuff because that's super duper hard. Yeah. But it's like, it's hard, I think, if I had to guess, for a mom to teach a son those things. You know what I mean? And my mom wasn't teaching me anything. Yeah. But yeah, just like, and so I tend to think it's those things. But there's a ton of different factors, right? But I think it's being kind to people and then encouraging other people that it's okay to be kind back. Yeah. And I think that you get a sense of people that are just being nice to each other. And I talked about one of these things on a different podcast, but one of the girls that was really popular in our middle school wasn't mean to me, but wasn't very nice to me. Mm-hmm. Like she had her clique, the really popular clique.
Yeah.
And then I had a class with her, and I made her laugh one day, and she thought I was funny, and I was like, I'm gonna be really funny because how I get girls to talk to me or whatever. She was so nice to me in that home ec class. But when I would see her with her friends would be like, oh, fucking Will, he smelled, because I smelled bad because I grew up really poor, and I had bad hygiene. No one taught me stuff. I had one pair of clothes, and I would have it washed. That way I could wear it to the week somehow. And I would mix it up. I had one shirt, so I knew I'm going to wear a shirt and then my coat over my shirt. And then, you know what I mean? Like I like change, like, and then I would switch back to the shirt just so it didn't seem like I was wearing the same thing.
Yeah, like you did the best you could.
Yeah, I made it work. I made it work. But they knew, like these people knew. And so her group of friends would be mean to me and she wouldn't say anything, which is kind of not just as bad, but it was confusing for me because I'm like, this girl's really nice to me in her class. She obviously thinks I'm funny, makes some bomb food together in home ec. Like there's other, like, you know what I mean? But it's like, it's that type of person. If I can go back in time, I would hope that person can get encouraged. Like, hey, like you could still be nice to me outside of here. You could stand up for me, because it only takes one time for that person to do something, and it makes me feel good, and I get to move on with my life. But that specific person was really nice to me, and actually later on in life did end up being a really good person. And so, it's those things, and I think that would help. I think if it's just like people are encouraged to go like, hey, it's also cool to be different.
Yeah, like embracing people for being different and not being judgmental about it. I think that's really a hard lesson to learn, because I think that a lot of people have beliefs about things, and so when somebody's different from them, it's really hard for them to be non-judgmental and kind of accept people for who they are.
Mm-hmm. Do you ever find yourself falling into that?
Yeah, I think that, I mean, any person, everybody judges. Like when you're observing things, you're making a judgment about it. That's the way I see it.
Yeah.
And there's moments where, you know, if somebody doesn't have the same belief as I do, like I can sometimes sense like, oh, like, you know, why don't they think the way I do? Or, you know, I kind of like get frustrated, but then I always am really mindful and aware that everybody's different. And I always try to remind myself, like, everybody's doing the best that they can.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it might not be like what I think they should be doing, but it's not about me. Like, there's plenty of times that I've made mistakes or that I've had to learn by doing things and realizing that I didn't want to do it that way. And so I try to do that, but I think everybody is judgmental in some way. I just try to like accept people for who they are as much as I can.
Yeah, I think I agree with everything you're saying. And the term judgmental or judging someone, it's a weird one, right?
It is, because you're making judgments about everything every day.
You're supposed to judge people. Like if someone's acting crazy, you're supposed to judge if it's crazy or if it's acceptable. Am I going to be around this? What kind of person do I think they are? If you're an interviewer, right? A lot of people have been interviewees, right? Like you've come into an interview. But if you're the interviewer, you're literally just judging someone for 20 minutes. Then you boot them out, you judge the next person. Then you put them all together and you judge them all. And then you pick your favorite one. That's what we're doing. You know what I mean? And then you as the interviewee, you're also judging, do I want to work here? Like, what are these people like?
Yeah.
What's wrong with that? So that there is it's a weird term because it has such a negative connotation to it.
Yeah, it does.
Plus Tupac's like, only God could judge me. And like, you get a lot
You're
of...
not God, so
a bunch
sorry.
of thugs are like, only God can judge me. I'm like, no, like everyone's going to judge you. Like, including God, like whoever.
If you get that
Satan
face
can
tat,
judge you.
you probably are going to get judged. It's not bad, but you know, somebody's going to notice that face tat.
Yeah.
You know?
You got only God can judge me on your forehead. I'm judging your only God can judge me tattoo. But it became kind of popular to say that, right?
Yeah.
And I see it on Facebook all the time or social media or versions of that. Like, I'm going to do me. Like, I'm going to do what makes me happy. And if y'all ain't about it, only God can judge me. Yeah. And it's like, no, we're all judging you. You wrote this so we can all put our opinions below it and click a button that has a thumbs up or a smiley face or write something. Like, that's, you know what I mean? That's what you wanted. And so that's a weird term when people say like judgment. You're supposed to be judging things. Now, to get the title as judgmental, I think, and you can correct me if you feel something different, is the type of person that always has critique and they don't ever critique themselves. And their only job is just giving out critique. And they're just like, too small, too big, too happy, too sad. You're too tan. You're not tan enough. You're not funny enough. You're kind of funny, but not. Yeah, I think you can work on your presentation. To me, that's like, well, you're being judgmental, and you're always like, it's never good enough for you. You just have some sort of. To me, in my head, that's what that's what a judgmental person would be. What does a judgmental person look like to you?
I do agree with that. I think that a judgmental person for me would be somebody that isn't seeing the person as a whole, and they're looking at an aspect of that person's life and saying that that aspect is bad or it's not good or it's not desirable, so therefore that person is bad.
I already like yours way better than mine. Because that's like, I thought mine was cool and you said that, I'm like, damn, that's like deep. No, so I get what you're saying. You're saying like if a really good person made a mistake. Is that what you're saying? Like a person that donates to charity, does all these good things, but maybe made a mistake and like I don't know, backed into a pole and then took off because they didn't want to stay. You're saying that like the whole body of work is a really good person. They've saved lives. They're a surgeon. They've saved lives. They've donated. They do all kinds of stuff in their community, but they made a mistake. So you're saying a judgmental person is like, that asshole like doesn't care. He runs away from like someone that's doing that instead of looking at the whole thing and saying this is just a really good person that made a mistake.
Yeah, and just kind of like looking at it in a way of, you know, obviously if it's something that you feel isn't ideal or it's not something that you personally like, that's okay, right? Because there's going to be things that you like that I don't like, vice versa. And then if it comes to a situation that obviously is like, okay, this is obviously not good for this person, or you don't feel like it's good for this person, then I think that you have to allow that person to do what feels good for them. maybe to me, smoking doesn't feel good to me, but maybe to somebody else, smoking feels good to them.
Yeah.
So who am I to like judge whether
Smoking
or not
what?
anything?
What if it was crack?
I mean, that's hard to say because I mean, of course, everybody knows it's not good.
All right, that's a bad one. What about something more popular like weed?
Weed, okay.
Are you saying that? So use judgmental. What would be a good judgment and a bad judgment of someone that you see that's smoking marijuana cigarettes?
So I guess a negative way of maybe looking at somebody would be like they're a pothead, they're not motivated, or they, you know, you kind of have some type of
That's a big one with pot. Huh?
like stigmatism about them. Is it stigmatism?
You said it right, I think.
Yeah. About
stigma?
them. Stigma. Yeah.
Stigmatism in your eye, I think, right?
Yeah. I was like,
I think we saw. I have no, and that's shit. Is it stigmatism?
I don't know. Stigma. I think it's stigma.
The word is stigma, but what's a stigmatism?
In your eye.
Really?
Yeah.
Like prescription? All right, we're going.
I think, I don't know. We might have to Google this one after we're done.
I think stigma.
Stigma.
Is right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like you have this like stigma about that, and then you're just thinking bad things about them because of that. And then a positive one would be like, say you still don't agree with it, right? Like my belief is like, I am completely against it. I think it's the worst thing. I would never affect my body in that way or whatever, right? That's how I feel about myself. A positive way of looking at that would be like, hey, that's not something that like I connect with. I don't think that's something that's good for me. But who am I to say what's good to somebody else? What if in their body, in their genetics, in their biology, it is good for them and it is helpful and it is making them less anxious? Maybe it's helping them eat because they're having trouble eating. Yeah. You know, you just don't know. And so I think just kind of taking a step back and saying, you know, like, hey, I don't necessarily like maybe somebody smoking in my face. I can just tell them like, hey, I don't like that. Can you not do that? But like, I don't need to like look at them and say like, oh, you're, you know, this age or you're this type of person.
You're a drug dealer.
Yeah. And
you're a gangster. You're a gangbanger and you're a criminal. You know how many people get called that? Like just because they're smoking weed?
Yeah.
Like, do you not realize that your doctor probably smokes weed? There's a lot of professional people in this world that probably smoke weed. So I agree with what you're saying. It comes with all these negative things.
Yeah.
So you're kind of talking about biases too in a way, right?
Yeah.
Like just saying that like it's okay to not like something, but allow other people to like it, right?
Yeah.
And understand that it's their own thing.
Yeah, and support them in that because maybe for them it's life-changing for them. Maybe it's something that feels good to them, and if they ever come to you and say, you know, hey Laura, like, can I talk to you about like how I've been getting high every day and like I'm starting to feel this and this, like what do you think I should do?
Yeah.
Then at that point I can say, you know, like, well, from what I know, like this is how I feel about it, like maybe you should do this and this. But until then, I don't think people should really put in their 2 cents on what like people should be doing.
I think you're absolutely right, and I think that it's important for people to know the differences. I think here's one of the good parts about we'll kind of get in this a little bit, but the whole coronavirus thing, right?
Yeah.
There's not a lot of good stuff about it, right? If you sit here, it's causing a bunch of anxiety, it's bad stuff, right?
Yeah.
But I was thinking today, I'm like, well, what is good about the coronavirus? That's a weird thought to have, right?
Yeah.
What is it bringing us? I think it's bringing us perspective, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Not everyone, but for the most part, I think for the first time in our lives, we're understanding similarly, not the same, but similarly what it's like to live outside of a first world country. Because I think that we take for granted the liberties that we have every day, like being able to go out and hit a bar or stop into a restaurant and pick up food or stop in at grocery stores. All these things that have been taken away from us, right? Yeah. Conversations with strangers, being able to feel healthy enough to even go out in the first place, right? Yeah. Like all these things, right? We forget about sunlight, right? Like that's important too, like getting outside and doing stuff. A lot of people are just staying inside. Yeah. So I think one of the things that we're benefiting from is we're getting to understand that there's countries like Africa, right? Certain parts of it, at least. There's third world countries where they're just playing in a mud puddle. You know what I mean? And to them, they're like, this means nothing. Like, are you kidding me? You guys are tripping out about coronavirus? Like, I don't even know if I'm going to get a meal today. Like, I don't know. Like, I'm playing around this mud puddle. There's diseases everywhere. The last thing I'm worried about is this thing you guys are talking about that not that many people are dying from, you know what I mean? Like, statistically, like, percentage-wise. And so it's like, that's super important, but we take that for granted because we don't have to worry about that because we do have running water and we do have restrooms and we do have access to food and we do have all these things. So I think for the first time in our lives, we're being exposed to what it's like to being cut off from things like toilet paper, which is a silly one, but a big one that people stocked up on, right?
Yeah.
All these things. And so we're cut off from the world a little bit. So I think the benefit, or one of the good things, right, if we're looking for something, is it makes me personally, and you can tell me how it makes you feel, it makes me appreciate all the little things that we have that make our life easy so we can focus on the complex things or the things that we perceive to be complex.
Yeah.
But in reality, this is not even close to that third world country, but we're definitely living less than a first world country right now. And it makes us realize like all these liberties that we take for granted. Yeah.
That's a good point. Yeah, I think for me, that's kind of similar to how I've been feeling too. I also do feel, especially in the United States, you know, we work a lot. A lot of people don't have vacation or things like that. And so
that's becoming pretty apparent. I didn't realize how many people don't have time off until this happened.
Or limited, you know, and so we work a lot here in this country. And so I feel like we're constantly moving, moving towards the next thing that we want. This is kind of allowing us to kind of like stop, I feel, and kind of like look within and kind of look at life a little bit more simple, you know, and appreciate things and appreciate the people in our lives. And I can feel that definitely in myself, at least, you know. I feel like for me, I felt like, okay, you know, like this is giving me time to not be on the go all the time, you know, and like this is giving me time to appreciate the simple things in life. And so I hope that, you know, when this is over, I continue to take time out of my day to do things that feel good to me, that aren't me working towards a goal, you know, just something that I'm doing, like drinking tea outside. Or
you've been doing that a lot.
Yeah, I have.
You even like redid the patio, like reset it up, and you just spend time out there.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that you said that. So you're saying that like because you have all this extra time, you're making more of the time, or you're doing things you wouldn't normally do? Like, what did you mean by that?
Yeah, I guess I'm just being more mindful of like myself, you know, my body, my energy, and just kind of taking a breather. I think a lot of the time, you know, I work full time. I'm getting my master's right now. I have friends, I have family, you know, I'm always kind of on the go doing things. And I enjoy that. I enjoy being pretty active. I enjoy having goals, but I also sometimes lack time just to be by myself and just kind of like check in with myself, like how am I feeling today? Or, you know, I'm like on the go so much that like I forget to do those things. And in the past year or so, I've been practicing yoga more, and so that's kind of helped me like become more mindful of that. But I've noticed that I need to take time throughout the day to do that for myself, and just kind of like think about like even this situation, like just moments where I'm like, hey, like this is coming up for me. Why am I feeling this? Like, do I want to feel this? Like, how can I not feel this? You know, and just kind of being aware of my feelings instead of kind of just pushing through them to get the day going.
What do you think about people that are not listening to any of the guidelines? Like, there's a huge, I don't know if you pay attention to people like online and stuff, which is all there really is to do right now, right? Yeah. I'll get our info for online. But there's spring break, so there's a bunch of kids on the beaches that aren't supposed to be on beaches. There's kids at bars that aren't supposed to be at bars, which is why they put in all these things. What is your opinion of younger kids that are not really taking it that seriously? What do you think?
It's difficult because I think it goes back to that judgment where I don't ever want to feel like I'm judging like a particular person or a group of people. But for myself personally, and I think that like through this is something that I've like kind of recognized, is that like it's really easy for me to be selfless. Like in this situation, it comes natural to me. Like once I heard, you know, what was going on and what the recommendations were, it was easy for me to think, okay, there's other people that have compromised immune systems. There's elderly. I don't want to be somebody that is spreading it, you know, even if, say, I were to have it or carry it or get it and heal from it. I don't want to be somebody that is is doing that. And I don't think that it's selfish for people to not think about other people. I think that there's just some people are a little, it's more natural for them to think about themselves, and that's okay too. There's nothing wrong with that because there's benefits of that. And so I think that maybe that's an awareness that it's coming up for all people, is just kind of how to work together and maybe be a little bit selfless in situations that maybe otherwise they wouldn't, think about other people. But this is a kind of a big situation that's affecting lots of people, and there's vulnerable populations that you have to think about.
I think people just don't know. Like, if I had to guess, right? You had said something like they're not thinking to be selfless, right? Which I think is super important. I don't know if the people that aren't taking it seriously are not being selfless. I think they just don't know. And here I could be wrong, but I would like to assume that it's ignorance, right? Because I don't think that people intentionally will do something. They're doing it because they don't think it will happen. That's what it is. I think people are going out and doing stuff because they think it's silly. They think that there's no chance. So I think education is the biggest thing. I think people need to understand. This is me, and I'm guilty of this. When I first saw it, I still kind of feel this a little bit. It's a little bit blown out of proportion.
Yeah,
I think my first thought is just don't hang out with old people. Right? And I'm being honest. This is my first thought, and I'll explain this more in a second. Just don't hang out with old people. If me and you go out and do stuff and we don't hang out with old people, we'll be fine, right? Which makes sense. So when I say that, even to myself right now, I go, word, brother. Like, like part of me is like, yeah, like, let's just go out. But then I really, really think about it. And me and you have talked about this. This is how I feel about it. I feel that it is blown out of proportion, but it also is serious. Because here's what could happen. I could go hang out. A lot of people are asymptomatic, right? And I'm never going to get tested unless I have some symptoms. They're telling you that, right?
Right.
So let's say me and you go out, which this isn't an option anymore. But let's say when it was, me and you go out to a bar.
We go to a house party right now.
We go to a house party, bonfire. There are people doing things, right?
Right.
Let's say we will go out and someone gives it to me. They don't even know they have it. They give it to me. I don't know I have it, so I don't know either. Then I go to another party and I give it to guy number 3, right? And he doesn't have any symptoms, and he gives it to guy number 4. Guy number 4 goes home to grandma, gives it to grandma. Even though my version of it sounds right, just don't hang out with old people. In this scenario, I never hung out with one old person, but I hung out with someone who hung out with someone who hung out with someone who's really close to his grandma, and now grandma gets it, right? And that's an option. And so when I think about it like that, it is important to not just think, and I say this because people that are listening that are probably thinking like, hey, like, I don't hang out with old people, and even if I get it, I'll be fine. You could affect someone who could affect someone who could affect someone who could affect grandma. And maybe grandma gets it anyways, right? Maybe that happens regardless of you. The whole point of these measures that they put out is to slow down the spread. I mean, you talked about this. It's not to stop it. There is no cure right now. They're working on it. So they're not saying, hey, don't do this and we'll cure it. No, it's to slow down. The whole point is we don't want to overload the hospitals at the same time. Think of it as a scale. Like, if we get it slowly, but the same peak, right? Same exact peak. If we get it slowly over time, hospitals can deal with that. But if we all just go buck wild, everyone's in the hospital at once. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's overwhelming. And then people that have other sicknesses that have nothing to do with corona are missing out on treatment, right?
Right.
Because they need all this stuff. So there is an impact. That's my version of it. It does seem silly. A lot of it is silly. When this is all over, I think we'll all look back at it and realize we didn't need to do all this crazy stuff. We just needed to stay home. You know what I mean? Or just not go out so much, or take it seriously, or be kind, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
But we'll also know that for the people that did take it seriously and made an impact on the healthcare system to slow things down, we'll all be grateful for those people.
Yeah, definitely. And I do agree with you. I think there's some people that maybe just don't understand and don't have like the education to know where it's at and where it could be, or don't really want to listen to what's happened in Italy and where they're at in their situation.
They're pretty bad.
Yeah, I think that part, that's one part of it, one component of it, and the other part is I do feel that there could be certain people that don't see it that way and kind of don't have like a selfless mentality of like, hey, this is helping the bigger group of people, let me not do this.
Yeah.
And not that there's anything wrong with that, but just
it just doesn't seem that big of a deal. I think that the people that are doing it don't know. Maybe they will now that I've explained it in a way where they can understand, like, oh crap, I think they don't know. It's not like they know info like this and they go, fuck them, like I'm gonna do it anyways. I don't think that's the case. I'd like to hope it's not.
Yeah.
I think that they're just not thinking long term.
Yeah.
They're thinking, this is a little wild.
I think that's the majority
yeah.
of people. I think there might be some, like, I've seen it on Facebook, kind of thing, like where people are just kind of like, I'm going to do whatever I want to do. And like,
some people are still calling it a hoax. Like, they're like, it's not real.
What's that saying? Live fast, die young, or you know what I mean?
People posting that?
Yeah. And so it's just like that kind of thing. I'm like, okay, like, yeah, so that's what I'm kind of talking about is like, yeah, okay, that's okay for you. That's the same kind of thing I'm bringing up with like, the conversation we had about like smoking, right? Mm-hmm. If somebody wants to, even in the situation where you said like smoke crack, if people want to smoke crack and they, like it's, research that their life expectancy isn't going to be that long and they're okay doing that because they just love their life on crack and they want to like, maybe pass away at an early age because that could happen, then that's their choice, right? But in this situation, it affects a lot of people. So not caring about your life expectancy or what could happen to your health affects other people's health. But I do agree with you. The majority of people aren't aware of like the 14-day window and all of that. And so I think that's what causes.
It affects everyone when you do choices. People need to understand that. And when you're mentioning the crack thing, emotionally, that could affect a lot of people.
Yeah,
but I
think
does. You're right. Physically, me smoking crack isn't going to make you have crack effects, right? But emotionally, you do affect your family and friends. But I think we can all get over that. When you physically affect someone's well-being to the point where they could pass away or be severely sick, that's a different story. Because the emotionals, we're resilient. We're human beings, and we do this all the time, right? But our bodies, especially at an older age, they're not that resilient. And you're essentially making a choice for someone who can't make it. And when you zoom out, we're just a little dot, right? We're a planet.
Yeah.
And it's easy to be like, well, whatever. I didn't know people die. People get sick, right? It's super easy to say. But when you zoom in and you start seeing a whole body of work of a person, I think you start appreciating them better.
Yeah.
And I think that's what people need to do is just understand that, like, you don't want to be the person when it's all over and you figured out that you played a part in affecting that person. Mm-hmm. You don't want to be the regretful person. And you don't want to be the person that says, if I could go back, I would have done blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
You want to just take precautions because it's not worth it. This will all be over. This will all be over. You know what I mean? That's my point. Yeah. Here's a few things that I'll say about it. And here's the Italy thing. I'm glad that you brought that up because for the people that are taking it seriously, here's another thing. Don't freak out. Like, don't get anxiety. Yeah. Don't do wild stuff. Don't hoard stuff. Stop freaking buying toilet paper, all the hand sanitizer stuff. Like, understand that we all need that stuff too. Here's how what it is affecting people, right? Because me and you were not hoarding. Mm-hmm. I went to the store and I'm like, damn, they're out of this. Someone hoarded all the stuff, right? Yeah. I went to the store, they're out of X, Y, and Z. So because people hoarded X, Y, and Z, because 1, 2, 3, whoever did it came in and took all this stuff, I'm now going, well, now I need to find toilet paper, right? So then I'm getting clever on how to find toilet paper, not because I think I need it to get past the corona, but because everyone else thinks they need it, bought it all up, and now there's a shortage for the people that wouldn't have done that, but now need to also do that to fit in to be able to get resources, right?
Right.
And I'm assuming that happened with everyone else too, because I know tons of people that went to the store like, it's gone. Now everyone's hoarding everything because it just seems like the thing to do, and we're all matching. And now we're fighting each other with resources. We're not hoarding because we think we need it to live. We're hoarding it because we don't want other people to hoard it before we get to hoard it. Mm-hmm. And it just comes this weird thing, right? Yeah. The Italy thing, people need to realize, I haven't had a chance to talk to you about this either. The biggest things that I learned from today, which Italy is being hit percentage-wise way worse than China. Obviously, the death toll is bigger in China because they have a higher population. Right. But Italy's getting hit bad, like really bad. Yeah. People need to understand it affects people with underlying conditions. And it also affects elderly people a lot more because their immune systems are compromised. Mm-hmm. Italy has the highest elderly population in the whole world. And so that's what they're known for, right? That's a reason why it's affecting them. Not that that's the only reason, but that makes sense. So if people are wondering why is it so bad in Italy, they reacted late. They have an older population, and obesity is a big one, right? we're an obese country, but Italy, the home of pasta. They eat a lot of carbs and starchy stuff. And so they have a weight issue over there. Culturally, it's different, where it's actually encouraged over there. Like someone who's overweight, like a mom with an overweight son, it's a good thing. Like I fed him. It's like it's a cultural
like
thing.
A pride thing almost.
Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like if you had a kid that was skinny, it would or skinnier, like the other families would be like, you must not have fed your kid. And so it's a pride thing. Yes. Yeah. So they do have that over there, which people don't understand when they say things like the coronavirus is affecting people with underlying conditions. Obesity is one of those things.
Right.
And so Italy's also getting hit with that because they have an obesity and they have the highest population of elderly people. So it hit them harder. So people that are taking it seriously, don't freak out when you see that. Don't freak out when you see the China ones. Don't freak out when you see the ones here. And this is my advice on this. I've told you about this. And I'm stealing this, so I want to give credit to him. I showed you that Lupe Fiasco video.
Yeah.
And I think this is the most excellent way of looking at it. And anyone who's listening to this podcast, go to YouTube and look up Lupe Fiasco coronavirus. He's done 4 videos. One of them I'm talking about. The other ones are also great. But he makes a really good point. And he says this, and I'm paraphrasing. He pretty much says, the coronavirus is what you make of it. Mm-hmm. The coronavirus makes you sick. That's all it does. It doesn't make you hoard things. It doesn't make you racist. It doesn't make you rude. It doesn't make you act crazy. You're doing that. You're human beings, right?
Right.
We
you have
are
control of that.
You're the one doing that. All it does is make you sick. Your reactions and all the way you overblow things, the protective things, the wild stuff, the freaking out that you're doing all that. So it is what you make of it. Understand that it is important and we need to take it seriously, but you can do that while not panicking. You can do that while not taking resources from other people. And when possible, you can be helpful. And so people are probably asking themselves, how do I be helpful in a situation where they're asking me not to help people? I can't leave my house. Yeah. Here's how you can be helpful. Do things to counteract it. Do the measures where they ask you, clean your house. Earlier, you talked about this, Laura. We've had a lot of fun since coronavirus, by the way. A lot of fun. Because we make the best of it here. Laura has cleaned one thing every single day. She's tried to rearrange stuff. She rearranged the front porch. You did. And now you sit there, you spend time there either on the phone, reading a book, or just hanging out. We've made up cool things, you know what I mean, that we could just do. We have an event that we're planning tomorrow just between me and you. This is what you can do to make this moment better, right? Is hang out, get to know the people you're with. If you want to be literal, work out, stay active, do things. If you have an underlying condition, work on that thing. If you're not in shape, work on being in shape. If you have a bad diet, try to eat a little better. Do some things to boost your immune system. Yeah. That's what you can do to help. Yeah. And I know I feel like I just went on a coronavirus rant.
No, I think it's all good information, and everything that you're saying I think is right on.
What could someone do during this time? And it doesn't have to be like deep or because you're creative. You're probably the most creative person I've ever met, by the way, which is a good thing. You have a way of making things fun. You have a way of coming up with cool ideas, whether it's with me or by yourself. You can make the most of your time. Sometimes it's not like if you had time, you're not going to be bored. Sometimes it's not the healthiest thing, like on your phone, right? Yeah. Or watching a show, which is me too. We've binge watched entire shows in one day. Yeah. Right. Mm-hmm. But then we're still making up that time. Other times it's great things like the cleaning, it's research, it's active, you're running, you're going to yoga, you're doing things here, obviously during the corona here, but even before that, going out. So you make the most of your time. School, you do work, you do all these things. You deal with my ass. Yeah.
So that's about 75% of my time right there.
So during the corona, you're limited on leaving your house, right? Which people are still doing. And we've done, I think, twice. We haven't left a lot. Groceries. That's pretty much all we leave for.
Yeah. That's everything we've left for. Last almost 2 weeks.
What do you think someone could do? And I hope you were thinking about this because you knew the question was coming.
Yeah.
So hopefully you have something to say. What could someone do that's hanging out at home? Maybe if they have kids, maybe they don't, whatever. What can someone do to like be productive or stay busy at home? What are some fun ideas?
I was actually thinking about that today, the whole bored thing that you had mentioned about me, where you're like, I'm never bored. Yeah. And I actually thought about that today because I was seeing how people were posting like, I'm bored. And I'm like, I don't know like if I've ever really felt bored. Like I was actually thinking that, right? Yeah. So I'm trying to think of things that I do since I can't remember the last time that I've actually felt bored. Yeah. But I think for me, I think it's always kind of looking within. And I know I've mentioned that before. And when I say that, it's like asking yourself, like, what do you need? Like, what do you need to do? Like, do you feel like you need to be active? Do you feel that you need to be creative? Do you feel like you need to make something? Do you feel like you need a connection with somebody? Do you feel that you need to declutter a space because that feels good? Do you feel like petting your dog? Do you feel like, just kind of asking yourself like what you need, and you kind of always know what you need. So sometimes what you need could be like, hey, what I need is just to sit on the couch and play on my phone.
Yeah.
And I think maybe and I don't know, because I was actually like thinking about that today. Like, I don't remember the last time I was bored. So I don't know if the bored feeling comes from the fact that I always keep myself so busy, or the fact that like I'm always in tune with myself, so I never feel bored with what I need to do for myself, if that makes sense.
I have a theory that the people that are bored are probably the same people that were already bored before the corona. But because it is being creative. And I like what you said, like identifying what's my need, right?
Yeah.
Instead of just doing something, know what your needs are. Maybe let's use a realistic one, healthy or not. Mm-hmm. Maybe my need is to go out and party and be social. And if I'm a girl, meet dudes. And if I'm a dude, meet girls or whatever. Mm-hmm. So let's say I'm that, right? Mm-hmm. Give me advice. I'm Will.
So if you want to party, let's just say in that situation, I think that you could do two things. Like, if you have a roommate, you guys could play beer pong with each other and like have a good time, or
blast some music,
play some drinking games. And if that other part of you also is wanting some type of like male or female attention, then, FaceTiming somebody that you're talking to, or texting that person, or playing a game with them like over the phone, like a question game, or just doing something that will make you feel connected, whatever. If you're single and you're wanting if your need is just companionship or attention, or if it's like sexual, maybe, like, then just meeting that need, whatever it is, like over the phone, like what you can't do now.
Did you just tell me to have phone sex with a stranger?
No, I'm just saying.
Is this real right now?
I'm not saying you. I'm saying that.
Oh, yeah. No. I didn't want to do that anyways. What would you do if I'm like, oh,
right.
All right, I am totally cheating on you online later. What would you, I feel like that's good advice for people even before the corona. I think that people forget that there's multiple ways of communicating, right? Yeah. Besides texting. What's up with it? I'm not a texter at all. Yeah. Is it, if you were, tell me this, right? Because before we were together, when I was single, what's that look? You're gonna murder me right now?
What are you gonna ask?
You're like, you were single before me? What the fuck?
No, I'm just like, what is he gonna ask?
No. Even before you, I wasn't much of a texter. I would text you when we were friends, right? Because we were friends before we got together. Not even a lot, but I would text you probably more than I texted most people, because I knew that's your method of communication. I was never a texter. I'm a caller. And I know as a single guy, when you're talking to a girl that you like, when you call her, there's always this moment where she's like, hey, but it's more exciting. And they're always like, wow, this person called me. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Do you think, let's flip the roles here. Mm-hmm. You're a single girl before we're together. And if you were texting a guy, which everyone does, right? Mm-hmm. And he called you, would that feel different? Wouldn't it feel different or better? Like, how would you feel if someone called you as opposed to texting you?
I think a call is always kind of a little bit more intimate, and I think that you feel more connected to somebody when you can hear their voice and you can hear how they're saying things. Mm-hmm. Because I enjoy texting, and when I was single, I enjoyed texting, but sometimes you don't always understand, like...
Did you prefer texting, though?
I don't know. That's a good question. I feel like if it was somebody that I was really interested in getting to know, I would prefer a call.
I'm glad you said that. Yeah. Because the intimate part is important in even figuring out if you like that person.
Right. But if it's just like you're talking to somebody for fun, or like just trying to get to know them, then texting is fine. But like, I feel like when you get to that romantic level, like when you're trying to really like get to know somebody, it's hard to interpret text. Like it can be really misleading.
I'm a bad texter too, so I think I have a hard time conveying my like message. I'm a good talker, is what it is. So I know I can do better at a conversation, so I don't even try it. Like I don't even try to text.
Yeah.
Even in like non-intimate conversations, just people talking to me and texting me, I'm just gonna call them. Why are you laughing? Are you thinking of something? Are you thinking of like a moment? You could say it if it's appropriate. Go for it.
Yeah, I will. It's actually kind of funny. I don't know if I've ever told you this, but
oh shit, we're gonna break up. I'm gonna go online after this. My girlfriend doesn't fucking like me.
No, it's not about you. It's about like texting when I was single.
What is it? What happened?
When I was talking about like how sometimes like you misinterpret what somebody's saying. Mm-hmm. So there was a guy, and I won't say who it was, but like he was really shy.
This is a guy that like you guys were talking?
Yeah, we were talking for like a year or year and a half. And mind
hopefully
you,
not just text. We just texting for a year and a half?
Yeah, well, like it was just really weird. Like, and I don't know. It was a really weird situation. Maybe he just, I don't know. But anyway, so I was also talking to multiple people at the time. Let's just be honest about that. And so I wasn't spending a whole year on one person, but
year and a half, you said.
Yeah, year and a half. Yeah.
Thought I'd clear that up.
So he was just like always really shy. I found out, like, I know this is kind of weird, but like he was really overweight when he was younger, right? And so then whenever he was older, like when, like I think like in like high school, he was overweight and stuff like that, and so I kind of was like, well, maybe that's it. Like, maybe he just doesn't have, like, the confidence to be like, hey, like...
So you're talking to him while he's in shape, but
yes.
You know him from high school and you knew he used to be out of shape?
Somebody told me that. And then and showed me a picture, and I was
like... So you're
like,
like, that makes sense.
Yeah,
it's
that
probably
like,
from back
because I was
then.
like, well, like, he says he likes me, but, like, he's not inviting me to do things, like, and, like... Yeah, so this is really confusing, you know? Like, he's just trying to get to know me through text. Like, that's kind of weird.
Yeah.
So I was laughing because we were talking about, like, when you misinterpret things. So, like, a year had gone by, and, like, it's freaking funny. But he texted me, and he said he was going to the lake. And the way that he worded it, it sounded like he was saying, do you want to go too? And Dan was in town, actually.
Yeah.
So I was like, me and Dan like have like a silly like, you know, relationship or whatever. But like I was wearing a dress, and I remember this. But like I was wearing a dress, and it was like the button-up type, you know, that you could just kind of like go like that, right?
Dan's your little brother.
My little brother. Yeah. And so I like all of a sudden I was just like joking, and I like ripped my shirt open, and I was like, he finally asked me out. Like I was like so excited, right? And then I go like to the nail salon because like I'm like excited to like, you know, hang out and stuff like that.
Like you're getting your nails done to go to the lake?
Yeah. I don't know why, okay? But I was excited about it.
Good old lake nails.
Get some dirt under those nails. And then I finally realized that like he didn't invite me. He was just saying that he was going to the lake.
Wait, how long do you think it took you?
I got my nails done. I got home.
Was it like the same day though?
Yeah, it was the same day. It was the same day, but I was pretty bummed. Yeah.
Wait, so how did it end? Wait, how did you know that he wasn't inviting you? Do you remember?
I think that like I was kind of like waiting for him to be like, hey, I'm gonna go pick you up, or like, hey, meet me here, or like, and then I also started thinking about it. I was like, I'm like a thinker, right? So I'm like, that is kind of weird, because I had asked like, oh, like overnight, like basically he's asking me to stay overnight, and I was like, well, that's kind of weird. Like this is the first time we're hanging out. Like I started kind of rethinking it, like, should I like hang out with this person overnight when I've like never hung out with them for like, you know? And so then I started reading back the text, and I'm like, oh crap, like he might be saying that like he's going. Like I think just the word, it was just really weird how it was worded, because it could be interpreted the way I thought it was. At
least it didn't go as far as you're like, hey, where are you at? I'm here.
Oh God.
At least you like figured it out, and like that is weird though. Like that you would I can't picture a year and a half and not making it known.
Yeah.
That you want to hang out with someone.
Yeah, and like I don't know, maybe he had a girlfriend. Who knows?
I don't know.
Yeah.
You would know. A year and a half, you would have figured that shit out quick.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm being honest, I was talking to other people, so it's not like my full attention was like on him.
Yeah.
But yeah, full year, and I was just kind of like, and the things that he would text about were really interesting, and it was like he wanted to get to know me, so I don't know.
I think guys are scared to tell girls they like them. And I don't know where that started. Like, but it's like, it's, what is your theory on that? Because I know I'm like that for sure.
Like you had a hard time saying that you like girls?
I've never, ever, girls I've dated or even girls I've talked to, I've never told them that I like them. Like I've never gone like, hey, I like you and I'm interested in you and I'd like to take you out. It's always been me having conversations and seeing where it goes. And I'm not saying that everyone's like that, but I know that I don't know the best way to word it, but I know that or let me ask you as a woman, is it important for a guy to just ask you or to say I like you? Or is that a turnoff? And if it is, what's the window? Like when I meet you, how long do I have before I can say it? Because if someone says it the first day they meet you, that's a little weird, right? Or is that normal?
Well, I think that like it's hard to say whenever you're dating because like, I feel like when you're dating, like for me personally, like sometimes I in my mind wanted something more serious than maybe I was ready for at the time, right?
Well, if you're dating, I think you would know already, right? I'm not talking about dating. I'm talking about just interest. If a guy likes you, how is he supposed to tell you?
I think that, I guess, for me personally, when I was single, like when somebody would ask me out on a date is when I would feel like they're interested in me. Mm-hmm. Like if somebody was like, hey, do you want to go to a party? Then I wouldn't really know, like, hey, do they just see me as a friend? Or do they just want, like, to party with me? Or, so usually for me personally, I would always, like, if somebody took the time out to be like, hey, like, and even if it wasn't like a date, but like a date, like I guess a traditional date, like movie and a dinner, right? Yep. It could be like a date, like, hey, like, I want to go hang out with you at the park and bring a picnic or something. You know what I mean? Like something kind of.
I think it's better just to say it.
Like say that you want to take them out on a date?
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like whenever you're talking to somebody, I feel like you need to make that step. It's really hard. And sometimes like girls are comfortable like in.
But you're saying this as someone who's dating a guy who didn't do any of those things.
Yeah. Well, I didn't really date him. I was talking to him.
No, me.
Oh, you.
Yeah, I'm referring to me. Oh. I didn't do any of those things. Yeah. I never asked you out on a date.
That's why it took me so long to figure out that you liked me.
I made a love song, all right?
I didn't know because you played it at a party. So I didn't. Just kidding. You sent it to me through email.
Wait, you're not supposed to email girls now?
I guess you could have, but I think like I would have gotten it if you would have wrote the song and asked me to come over to like listen to it with you. I think I would have like been like, But some of the things in the song could have been interpreted like how, like, I'm really close with all my friends. Like, you know that now. Like, I tell my friends that I love them when I get off the phone with them.
I'm not saying what I did was right. Yeah. Or even the best. I'm saying it's ironic that you're saying these things work when I didn't do those things. But it also worked out for us. Took a lot longer. Life happened differently. But wouldn't you say, why are you doing I fucking know your face.
I was just thinking that, like, it took us being on my other date for us to be together.
Are you sure you want to talk about that?
I'm comfortable if you are.
I think it's kind of funny.
You can tell a story.
But yeah, so here's the dynamic. Because I think people feel the need to do things the right way. And I'm going to say men, right? Because I can only speak as a man. Men always wonder, how do I do this better? Some people use that in a good way. Like, how do I get out of my own way to meet the girl of my dreams? Some people use it the bad way. Like, how could I get the most women to sleep with me, right? But at the end of the day, we all are trying to figure out, how do we get this thing right? Mm-hmm. And so it's funny because me and you didn't take the traditional route, right? Mm-hmm. We were friends for at least 3 years, right? Before we ever got together. We were in fact friends. There was never like a inappropriate, like, we didn't like send inappropriate pictures. You know what I mean? There wasn't like maybe some flirting, huh? I don't even know flirting. I know that everyone was always intimidated by you. I think me and you have talked about this before, mm-hmm. because my attention went to you a lot, mm-hmm. right? Like if I was on a date with a girl but you were around, they're mm-hmm. like, it was always like, well, you spent way more time with Laura, or you paid way more attention to Laura, mm-hmm. or I said this and you thought it was dumb, but then Laura said the same thing and you like high-fived her. or like whatever.
Yeah.
So there was that part of it, but it was like literally friends. And then you were, to give everyone the full story, Laura was on a date with a guy. And at the time I was kind of dating a girl, but I wasn't really dating her. I mean, I was, but it was like an agreement thing. Like,
hey, to see other people
kind of like, hey, when this isn't working, let me know. And like, we'll kind of whatever. Right. So it was kind of like
this isn't going in the right direction. Just tell me when.
Well, it wasn't even if. Yeah. Not that it wasn't. It was more of a like, yeah. And she wasn't so nice to me anyways during the thing. I don't want to get too much into that just in case. But anyways, so like, yeah, it was during a time, and then you had called me because we were really good friends at the time, and you were mad. You were mad at your guy. Now, can we make up a name for him? Can we call him what's a fucked up name? I don't know. Do you? Yeah. What about like Chucky? Can we call him Chucky?
Oh, I had a friend named Chucky.
Oh, damn it. All right, let's call him Bob. Okay, Bob. So you're on you were going on this date, or you weren't even on the date. Do you remember that? You called me and you're like, this fucking asshole is supposed to be here at 7:00 and it's 7:23 and he's not here. And he just texts me that he's on his way. He's not. You're like, you're all mad. And like, it turns out he had drove from Midland, like from Midland to El Paso, and then he was leaving El Paso to come see. But he drove from Midland, to see. Yeah, it's like fucking like 5 hours at least. I don't know how long. I don't remember. It's like at least 5 hours. Yeah, long drive. And then you're like, he's running late. I remember telling you like, hey, I think I even told you like you're being kind of a brat like about this. Like, say that, exactly. Yeah, I'm like, and you're like, well, I'm just hungry, and he knows I'm hungry. And I'm like, you're being rude. Like, you just need to like let it go. Like, he'll show up, be nice to him, and go on your date. And you're like, well, I'm not gonna have fun with him. So like, do you want to go with me on the date? Because I want to have fun on this date. Like, you know what I mean, kind of thing. Yeah. And so I remember you asked me like, hey, will you go on this date with me? And I was like, yeah, like sure. Like, because I remember, if I'm being honest, I remember thinking, well, I do want Laura to enjoy her time, and if having me there helps her enjoy her time, then I'll do that for her. Did you ask him, by the way? Is it cool if my friend comes? I don't even remember the story there.
I think I did, yeah. I think I like was just like, hey, like, can I invite my friend Will to come? And
yeah.
Like,
yeah, so we go on this date. And then we go to Buffalo Wild Wings. And he was one of those guys that was like, he was definitely making way more money than me. And he, I think, was trying to impress you. Also just wanted to be nice. He wasn't a rude guy. He's a very, very nice guy. But I think most people, and this is the thing that guys notice, is when the other guy wants control, he will take care of things because it gives him leverage later on. So he kept telling me like, he was trying to pay for the food, right? Yeah. And I think at one point, like, you don't have to. And I'm like, yeah, he does. Like, well, it wasn't like that. He was like, hey, I got the meals. And I'm like, hell yeah, brother. Like, thanks, man. You're awesome. Like, I was not. I knew he was doing it to act.
We're cordial too.
Yes. Yeah. And so when he said that, most people would be like, no, I got it. You know what I mean? Don't worry about it. Thanks for offering. Yeah. But I was like, go for it, dude. Like, if you want to like take care of everything, like, I'm completely cool with that.
Yeah. I think you were trying to like not be kind of a threat almost or something. Like, you were just kind of like
that if I had challenged him on that, that's what he wanted me to do. So he could eventually pay for it anyways when I wasn't looking over to the restroom and have that over me. Yeah. And, I didn't want him to have it over me, so I thought the only way to not give him power is to let him be powerful, to show that I don't care. Right. And so I'm like, go for it. And then we got to the next bar, and he was like, hey, I got your beer. And I'm like, cool, I'll take 2 actually, because we can carry 2 at a time. And so I was just letting him buy me all this stuff. And so it's fine. And then you guys...
we got taken out on a date, technically.
We are on a 2-way date with your ex-boyfriend at this point. Yes. And then... I'll let you tell the rest of the story because I want to make sure that it's from here. Would you agree with everything I've said so far?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's pretty much how it was. Went to a different place. The end of the night is happening. We're all saying bye. You say, hey, Will, give me a second. I'm going to talk to him. And then I walk to meet you at the car. And then what happened from there?
So I do remember, like, it's weird, but I do remember, like, when we were there, like, there was a moment where, like, me and him were just hanging out and, like, you kind of went and did your own thing. And I remember that
makes sense.
Yeah, I kind of like remember like wanting to hang out with you. It
really?
Was, yeah, like I don't think I ever mentioned that, but like I kind of felt like I'm just like, oh, like I want Will to hang out with me, you know? Like I don't, and so I think that was like in that moment I was kind of like, okay. And
was I hanging out with the girl?
No.
Just people?
Yeah, just people.
So it was never like a girl thing. It was always like I have more fun with that guy.
Yeah. It was kind of like, I don't want to have a good time. Like, I felt like I was missing out almost kind of feeling. And then towards the end of the night, like, he was like, hey, like, can I stay with you? And like, we had never like stayed the night with each other or anything. And so I kind of felt uncomfortable with it. So I was like, no, like, I'm just going to go home. And then he kind of guilted me and was like, well, I have to drive all the way back from El Paso and like to El Paso. And I've been drinking. And then I got kind of annoyed by that because I was just like, don't expect to stay with me. Like, if you're, you know, like, he kind of insinuated that he wanted to stay. And so I just didn't like that, even though he
made it seem like I drove from Midland, I drove down, I paid for everything, and I've been drinking. I should at least be able to stay at your house kind of thing. And so it wasn't, the reason why I wanted to like clear that up, because it wasn't like you were being rude. It was more of like he felt entitled. Like, do you think it was sexual? Like, he felt entitled, like, you owe me the opportunity to hook up because of all these things. Because I got that vibe from him when he was trying to pay for my drinks. Mm-hmm. That's what guys do, right? Yeah. Or at least really smart people that are abusing their power, right? Mm-hmm. We have certain powers. Human beings, women have them too.
Yeah.
And we choose to abuse them or whatever. As men abuse that a lot, where they buy you something, they take you to a place. Talk to anyone. There's tons of stories where people are like, I felt like I had to because he did all these things.
Yeah.
Sometimes they actually say it.
And I don't like when men do that. Like,
did you feel that way kind of though?
I did. Yeah. Especially because like we had never like been intimate before. Like he'd never.
Like you guys hadn't even kissed, I think, right?
I think we had kissed, but that was it. That was to the extent of it. And like, yeah, I just felt like he was kind of like, hey, I've done all this for you. Like, at least, like, and I think I would have taken it better if it would have been like a legit, like, hey, like, just so you know, like, I have drank more than I thought I like needed to or whatever. Mm. And now that it's the end of the night, like, I'm kind of worried to drive. Like, I don't, like, at that time I lived alone. So that was also kind of weird because, like, I'm like, I don't want to just bring, like, even though I knew him, like, you just never know. Yeah. And so I was like, I think I would have felt weird about it anyways. But, like, he could have just been like, hey, you know, like, I'll sleep on your couch. Like, I don't want to disrespect you. If he would have had that mentality about it, I think I would have been like, oh, okay, it is that he's just worried. But I kind of felt like, oh, like, is he insinuating that he did all this stuff and, like, he's wanting something out of it?
He didn't drink that much, by the way.
Yeah.
And so it's like, that's the only reason. If he was hammered and falling over and was like, could I stay? Yeah. I think I, as your friend, would be like, dude, we got to put this guy on your couch. There's no way he's making El Paso.
Yeah. And
he didn't drink that much. He was fine.
Yeah, he was fine.
He was for sure using that as like an obligation kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah.
And you were strong and smart enough to recognize that and not do it. You were mad at him.
I was mad at him because of that.
Was that why?
Well, the first was that I was hangry and like he had made me wait like 2 or 3 hours to eat.
Yeah.
But the second part was that I was mad that like when we were leaving, because me and you were in the same car. So I think it was a little bit of the control too. Like he didn't want me to go home with you, maybe.
Yeah.
Even though we were in the same car. So I think maybe he wanted to feel like, oh, she's going to drop him off, or like if he stays then I'll be there too, maybe. I don't know, but like it just felt to me that he was kind of like, hey, I've done all of this, like
at least let me sleep over.
Yeah.
And
he wasn't gonna sleep over. Sorry.
Instead I slept over.
Yeah, you did.
But that wasn't my first time. I slept at your house before.
Yeah.
And I chilled at your house before. I came over as a friend while you were getting ready a few times. That was always something you told me too. You're like, hey, no one ever comes here, by the way. You had roommates a few of the times too, and I think you were always super respectful of their space and bringing people over. Yeah,
at that time I had Liz living here, and she had her son, and so I was always trying to be like really mindful of like who I was bringing to the house, and like with you, like when I started living by myself, I had already had you over, so I was comfortable with it.
And I knew Liz too, because she was dating my old roommate. That's how we met.
Yeah.
So that's the two things from the stories. We met. My roommate at the time was dating her roommate at the time, and then years later, after being friends for all these years, that's when we first got together, would be that night. Yeah. So we got together while Laura was on a date.
Technically, yes.
With someone else that wasn't me. You were cheating on me before we were together.
No.
I'm just kidding. Really.
Technically, yeah.
It's funny though, and it's cool. I'm glad that we have a relationship where we could talk about stuff like this. Yeah. Because I've never in my life had a relationship where it's even comfortable talking about stuff like this. I think that me and you have kind of always been that way, and then we've kind of grown into a place where we've been extra good at it, where I think we both respect and understand that we had lives before this. Yeah. It's not a healthy thing for people to be possessive. It's not. Mm-hmm. And for people that are listening that are in a situation like that, it's not healthy. Jealousy is healthy.
Yeah, it's a normal feeling, right? Like if you were to tell me something that makes me feel jealous, that's happened. But like I'm able to be like, okay, like I feel this way and I'm going to let it go because there's no reason to hold on to it.
And there is a difference between possessive and jealousy. Jealousy is smart. Jealousy is healthy. Mm-hmm. Jealousy makes the other person feel like you care. There's benefits to it, right? Mm-hmm. Healthy jealousy. Possessive is, I don't trust you. A lot of times it's because of that own person, right?
Yeah.
And so therefore, I'm not going to allow you to do anything just in case.
Yeah.
That's the difference.
Mm-hmm.
The two situations, one of them you go out and do stuff that I get jealous about because that's just how I feel. Yeah. And then we deal with it. That's normal. Mm-hmm. But the other part is I can't deal with my own jealousy. So you're just not allowed to go out anymore.
Yeah.
And like, or whatever. We're talking about extremes, but that is when it's controlling, right? Because I think people confuse that. Like, you know what I mean? And me and you don't have the perfect relationship. We definitely don't have the worst relationship. And I think we're definitely not in the middle either. We're definitely closer. We're closer to perfect. I'm just kidding. We're about as comfortable as I think we can be. And we have normal conversations and we fight like people that fight and we love like people that love and we communicate like people that communicate well. And there's times where we're terrible communicators, but the effort and the understanding is always there. So when we're getting it wrong, it's nice to know that we're eventually going to get it right.
Yeah.
And so I don't ever feel like that. And so that's always cool. And that's why I feel comfortable talking about stuff like this with you, with anyone else. I would have the same conversation with a stranger.
Yeah.
Because I feel like it's a resentment thing. It's not a resentment thing is what I'm trying to say. It always reminds me of your friend's wedding, Jess, your friend Jess. Do you remember? Yeah. In the church? Mm-hmm. And the pastor of the church said his speech about his wife, remember the wife? Mm-hmm. Like, don't, I forget the full speech. Remember the speech I'm talking about?
Yeah, I do.
He was pretty much saying, like, don't put your person down with your person kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
Like,
like, pretty much always have your person's back. Like,
yes.
No matter
if they're
what.
wrong, then they're right. Until you guys are alone, then you can tell them about how you felt.
Right.
But in front of everyone else, you're a combined force. So you don't want to be in a place where you're talking crap about people or like talking and putting someone else down. You always want to have your person's back. And if you really do disagree what happened, that's a conversation that you guys should have when you get home alone and figure it out.
Yeah.
Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I do agree. And I think that like one of the things that is so helpful with me and you that I really enjoy that like we're at a place where we're more aware of things. Mm-hmm. A lot of the time we can figure out like if something is triggering us, it's really not about the other person.
Yeah.
And so we're able to kind of like set that aside and be like, hey, you know, like this is how I felt, but you know what? It might be because of this and this. And it allows for that other person to be there for them instead of feeling like you're blaming that person for making you feel a certain way.
Yeah.
You know, and so I think that is like a huge key in a relationship is to be responsible for your emotions and why you're triggered.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What do you think? Let me word my question the best way as possible. Why do you think that I think a lot of time people think if they have a history of being in an unhealthy relationship, then that's just who they are. People think that. I don't think that. But people think this is how I date. This is how I feel. These are the types of relationships I attract. Mm-hmm. What would you say to someone that maybe is looking for something different? Because would you agree, yes or no, do you agree that our relationship is the healthiest relationship that you've had?
Yes.
Would you agree with that?
Mm-hmm.
So and I would agree the same. And so would you agree that you've had relationships that were unhealthy? Would you agree that you've had relationships that were neither? They weren't unhealthy, but they weren't healthy either. They're just kind of like blank relationships?
Yeah.
Would you say you've had a few of those?
Mm-hmm.
I have for sure. So what do you say to someone who has a habit or a pattern of being in really bad relationships? What kind of advice would you give them? And while you're thinking about that, which I do want you to think about, because I think that you're the perfect person to give advice on that. Mm-hmm. If that was the question to me, I think the person having bad relationships should consider having blank ones, if that makes sense. And what I mean by blank is the middle one, right? Because there has to be a filling out period. You have to be able to figure out if you enjoy your person. That's kind of the relationship that we were having when we were friends. It was a friendship. Mm-hmm. Friendships fall in the blank category because it's not a relationship. It's not inappropriate and negative. And it's definitely not like the healthiest relationship because it's not an intimate relationship. It's somewhere in the middle. It's a friendship. Mm-hmm. And so I think I would ask people to consider having a friendship and just getting to know people for who they are, even the people that they find attractive. It's so hard, and I'll speak as a man again, to find a woman attractive and to be their friend. It's really, really hard. But there's good things in that, because there's much more. There's attractive people that are not good people, and there's attractive people that are really good people. And flip that. There's people that aren't known to be attractive, that if you just got past that initial thing, and when I say attractive, it's that person's beliefs, right?
Right. Like
maybe someone that's attractive to me is unattractive to someone else. But if they got past all that, they get to their personality, and they are very attractive, and it changes. Have you ever watched a TV show like The Bachelor or The Bachelorette? We talk about that a lot. And like, I'll speak from my personal experience. There's the episodes, The Bachelor, which is when the girls are on there.
Yeah.
And you ask me, like, what do you think of that girl? I'm like, she's not that pretty. Like, she's not that great. Like the first night. And by episode 4 or 5, I'm like, damn, I really like her.
Yeah.
She became more attractive because she was nice. She wasn't unattractive, but there was other hotter girls. You know, and personality matters after a while. That's my point, is like, if you figure things out both ways, attractive people become unattractive, unattractive people become attractive, and everywhere in between. Yeah. But if you don't take the time and you just react off the first instinct, day one, we'll call it, you're never really going to get good results. You're not. Yeah,
definitely. I agree with that. And back to your question, like what advice I would give like a female, or I guess anybody, right? That's like in a relationship that
anyone that has a habit of a similar type of relationship.
Yeah. Do you kind of mean like abusive, or do you just mean like not healthy, like in the sense of like it's causing
however you interpret it, whatever their pattern is? I keep getting the same guy. Maybe that's how they feel. Okay. No matter what, this isn't working. I keep getting the same kind of guy. Is it me? Is it them? What would you say? If you were a counselor, friend, relative, doesn't matter. What do I do?
So my beliefs, and this might be kind of going a little bit too deep, but
no such thing. I'm in too deep.
Right? Is I believe in energy. Like I believe like everything typically operates on energy. Every person has energy. And so kind of like what you're putting out, you're getting back. So if there's somebody that is, say in a situation, let's just give an example, like a girl that's like, hey, you know, I'm dating all these guys, like they're just using me, like they say they like me, and then when it comes down to it, like they're cheating on me, and they lie to me, and all of these things, and then I leave them and I end up with another guy and he's just doing the same thing. It's more so, I think, like about the person, like what are you putting out in energy? So like, what are you thinking about? Like, are you in your mind thinking like, hey, I'm worried that people are going to cheat on me? Like, am I worried that men are going to cheat on me? And so basically like, you're kind of bringing that to you. You're putting that signal out. I want men to cheat on me. Even though you're not really like saying that, you're focused so much on that, then that's what you're attracting to yourself. Yeah. Instead of thinking of the things that you do want. Like, I want somebody that, say for instance, I can count on. So then focus your energy on like, what would it feel like for me to have a person in my life that I can count on? And the more that person kind of like brings that in, the more that they'll attract that.
I think that makes sense. I think the common factor, it's kind of exactly what you're saying about putting out the energy. Mm-hmm. Let's say you leave here and you go to, let's say we're not quarantined, right? Let's say on a regular day. Yeah. You leave here and you go to Pickwick and you get into a fight with the clerk there because they're being rude to you. So you get into a big old fight at Pickwick. You get in your car and like, that dude was an asshole. Mm-hmm. And you drive on down to C Senor to pick up your order. And the C Senor person, you get into a fight with them. An argument, right? Things aren't going well. You feel like they're rude and there's all this chaos, right? Mm-hmm. And so you're like, screw this place. I'm never coming to see Senor again. Mm-hmm. And then so you drive home with the food and you realize you need to pick up the mail. So you stop. Let's say we have a post office box and you stop at the post office and they're rude to you there. Mm-hmm. And they're just like, da 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 da. And like a big old event happens at the post office and it's crazy. Mm-hmm. And then you're driving home and then you get home. Were those just like everyone's, like, was the world crazy? Who was at all three places? Yes. Mm-hmm. And so if everything is going wrong everywhere you go, what's the common factor? You are. Mm-hmm. Something you're doing going back to attraction and the energy you put out, something you're doing isn't working. So I don't want to hear those people, whoever they are, we've all done this at some point, right?
Yeah.
I don't want to hear those people going, nobody loves me, nobody likes me, everyone's dramatic, it never works out for me.
Mm-hmm.
You can only control you.
Right.
You can't control everyone else. But if everyone else has a problem with you, you're the factor in everyone else. You're the one that needs to change. You need to do something different. It goes to dating. It goes to friendships, family. If your whole family hates you, either your whole family's crazy or something's wrong with you. You need to fix some stuff. And so I think people have a hard time because we want to be prideful and we want to be proud and do things that are good, right?
Yeah.
It's really hard to go, what can I change? But I think it's very, very important that people, specifically that are dating and attracting the same types of people, what can I do differently? And maybe you'll luck out the way that I lucked out in a lot of ways, right? And maybe you'll end up with someone as awesome as you and that sees the good part and goes, hey, there's this kid who's just partying and he's like wild and he does work, but if he was given the choice, he probably wouldn't. You know what I mean? He probably would do this instead or do these hip hop songs and go drink vodka with his friends and do stand-up comedy and just act, you know what I mean? Which is what I was doing when we got together. Let's be honest. I did have a job, but I also was doing those things and I definitely prioritized things. I wasn't the nicest. I was good. I had a good heart, right? Maybe people listening to this, maybe you'll luck out. Maybe you'll find your version of that, right? But you can't rely on that, right? If it wasn't you, it would have had to have been me. If there was a version of my life that worked out without you in it, it had to have been me, right? I got really, really lucky to find you. But if it wasn't you and someone told me, hey, your life ends up fine, and you don't even know Laura in this universe, I would go, oh, it must have been me. Yeah. So you can't rely on that person. But I think you can try to identify ways to be better. And better does not mean there's something, you don't take something bad and make it better. Sometimes you take something good and make it better. So don't think of it as a negative thing. People think if I need to change, then something must be wrong. No, change is good. Sometimes it's good to better. Sometimes it's better to greater. Sometimes it's greater to magnificent and wonderful and whatever bigger word you could think of than that. But you have to change. You have to change because everyone's always changing and you have to make yourself better. Yeah. And you have to be able to identify things you can be better and not take it personal. Yeah. And if you're someone that isn't attracting the right person, then find something small and grow from there. Find something that you can change and see if that helps and just keep doing that. Change one. That's how mathematicians solve problems. That's how the corona people are figuring it out. They don't just get it right. They try something and it doesn't work. Hey, I came up with this solution. It didn't work, but part of it worked. So we'll keep that part and change these. Oh, now 2 parts worked, but it still didn't cure it. We're even better. That's how it's process of elimination.
Yeah.
Can you imagine if one fucking idiot just sitting there like doesn't cure corona and he's just dropping like little cures? Still doesn't cure corona. Dang it, it's not cured now. It's never going to work. It didn't work the fucking first time. You're doing the same thing, right? You have to be creative. You have to understand and grow and add new things. Keep the things that are working, add new things until eventually you get the right recipe. And it works on almost anything in life. Yeah. I think so.
I think so too. And I think listening to you talk, I started reflecting a little bit on my past or things that have helped me. And I think the biggest thing that helped me is I was and you know this, I was in an abusive relationship and it was really bad. And I feel a lot of people don't really know that about me. But I ended up having to move out of state to kind of get away from that situation. And I think one of the things and I know it sounds super cheesy, but I kind of felt and before him, I did have other relationships that I felt were good or that I got something good out of. But I think that relationship was really not even it being oh, this same situation keeps happening to me. It wasn't really that. It was just this was so hard on me and heavy that I was I don't see myself being able to get past it, or I don't see myself this is all I know right now. So I can't see what's out there because that's all I can expect. And so I guess an advice would be kind of to just you don't need to know all the answers to like how to get what you want, but just know that like somehow it's going to work out, and like somehow you're going to have whatever you want, and just focus on what you want. And you don't need to think about like the steps, because I think sometimes people get in their head and they're like, well, like I'm in this bad relationship, like I obviously deserve this, like how am I going to be with somebody that's better, like you know, I'm so used to this. And so I feel like you have to kind of step out from that and like not think about the measures that you need to take. Just like, hey, A to B, like B is where I want to be, and I'm just going to like visualize myself getting there. Like I don't know how, I don't know when, but I think it's going to happen. And like putting that energy in that is what it's going to take to get there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think that sometimes taking massive action is a good first step?
Massive action, like in, like kind of like leaving, like how I did? Is that what you're kind of, yeah.
Like you never want to just run away from a situation, right?
Right.
And I don't think that you did that, by the way.
Yeah.
But do you think it's helpful for someone that's in a similar situation? When I say massive action, sometimes you got to do something big so you can get out of it, so you can come back and do all the small stuff. Is that something you would recommend as someone who did that?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, like, sometimes when you're in a situation like that, and, like, I'm a very sensitive person, like, anybody that knows me, like, I feel things, like, for people, like, if somebody's sad about something, I can usually, like, feel it, or, like, if somebody, you know, tells me something that's, like, heavy for them, like, I can feel that heaviness, like, and so I feel like in that situation for me, and I think everybody's different, but for me, I was just so caught up in that situation that like it took me like literally physically being away from it to realize like, oh, this is who I am, like, because like it just felt like me and that person were just like all intertwined and like mixed together, that like I couldn't really identify like what my needs were. And I couldn't really understand like what I needed to do for me, because I was too like involved. So like I think if that person or a person is in that situation, I think just assessing where they're at, because there was many times that like I tried moving, or like I tried changing my phone number, like I tried staying here, but like it just didn't work, you know? And so like to me, like it took that.
I feel like it would be the same way for a lot of people, but I think the reason why I'm asking this is I don't think people know to do that, right? First of all, let me say a few things, right? Is it okay with you?
Yeah.
I think it's pretty brave that you're even talking about it, and I think that people that are listening to you talk about it are going to want to know like what you mean by it. And that's the only reason why I ask you if that's what you mean. And that's the reason why I'm bringing it up is I don't think people know that. And as someone with a mom who was in an abusive relationship, I don't think anyone told her. She could have used a lore in her life to be like, hey, this is how it gets done. I think people feel weak when they do that because there's the term running away, right? And I'll clarify some of it, and I'll let you touch on most of it. But you moved away. This isn't how you got out of it, because you came right back into it and you had to do some stronger stuff to get out, right? But there was that period that you just talked about where you had to literally move away to get a clear mind, to figure out how to come back and deal with it. And some people, I think, might think, if the people that are in it, right, might think that that's a weak move, like running away, right? And so I think it's not. Would you agree that the strongest thing you can do is get out so you can think straight, figure things out, and then deal with it, right? That's also just as brave as sticking around and dealing with it?
Yeah, definitely. And I think at the time, like, if I'm completely honest, like when I left, I still was like talking to him on the phone.
Yeah.
And I still had, like, I knew, because I think I've always had a very good intuition. I knew that like we weren't going to end up together. I knew that like it was going to end. I didn't know how. I didn't know like in what means. Like, did that mean that like it was going to end for me, like my life, you know? Like I kind of wasn't sure, but I just knew that like it wasn't going to continue. Like I couldn't picture myself living my life with him until I was like 80 or something. Like I didn't foresee that happening. So when I went, I kind of had like the idea of like, I'll still talk to him and see how I feel when I'm there. And then when I was there, I was just like, I found out something that like I needed to find out, I guess. Like, and that was like he wasn't being faithful and stuff. And it was like.
So you didn't know that while you were here?
That he wasn't being faithful. I knew that like, cause we had like a relationship where we'd always break up and get back together, and it was just like on and off. I'd change my number, he'd find me, like it was just like a yo-yo. And then there were times that like I feel like he probably cheated, but I never had proof.
Yeah.
But this time when I was in Montana, like I had proof. And so like when I found out, I was like, oh my God, this is my ticket out, because like So
you felt kind of happy?
I was so happy. Like I was like, yes. Like
I'm glad you're talking about this, because you wouldn't think that, but I saw you smile a little bit.
Yeah, I was
so
like,
you feel relieved? Like finally, like I have my reason.
Yeah. Like because I think with him, like he knew how empathetic I was and caring, and his mom had just like passed away from cancer, and so like he was always like he'd always reel me in by like, but you're like the only like thing that's good in my life, and like I'd be like, yeah, you're kind of right, you know, like I would kind of think that.
Yeah, pretty awesome.
No, like I would be like, yeah, you know, and like I always had this like I always wanted things to be better for him, and I always wanted to like be able to help him in that way, but I also felt like he was weighing me down. Yeah. And I didn't know how to like move on and just like let him struggle. I think that was hard for me. But then whenever he did something like that and I had proof, and it was just like, okay, like you chose this. So like, and I just was like, I remember like he owed me like quite a bit of money, and I was just like, hey, you're going to pay me back? And he was like, nope. And I was like, okay, bye. And like, that was like,
even more reason.
Yeah. Like I was just like, okay. And then like days after that, he'd like call and call and call. And like, you know, I moved back and he would stalk me, and like, yeah, it was pretty bad. But like, I just continued to just like move forward. Like when looking back, like I think that I cared about him, but I think that I was like really, what's the word? Like when manipulated. I was really manipulated.
Yeah. Like he knew you cared about him, so he used that to gain position in your guys' relationship.
Yeah. Like he knew that I cared where he ended up, and he knew that he wasn't ending up in the right direction. And so he knew that he could use that like to reel me back in to help him.
Yeah. That's part of the things that I talk about when I say like the power that men have. Yeah. And me and you have talked about this in the past. I don't ever mean that as men are more powerful than women. That's not true. Holistically, you know what I mean? There's tons of things that go into what makes a person powerful. We're all powerful. But as men, we have a certain responsibility with our power that I think that you need to use it the right way. And it's up to other men to hold each other accountable and say, hey, like you're not allowed to use it like that. There's responsible ways to use this power. Women have it too, and women have power over certain things, and sometimes women abuse it, right? It's just not popular to report that if you're a guy, but it happens. There's plenty of guys that are in like relationships that are emotionally abusive, financially abusive. There's tons of things, right? Yeah. And so I think it's important that people understand that, and I'm really proud of you for talking about those things too. I really do think so, because I think that people need to understand that it looks different for different people, right? It looks different. Do you consider yourself a domestic violence survivor? Or I
definitely do. I think for a long time I struggled with that title, because I felt like I never like ended up in the hospital, or like
Did you compare yourself to other people in similar situations?
Yeah, like you always hear those stories, like and in this particular situation, like, which wasn't very smart of me, but like his ex prior to that, he did hospitalized, and so I always felt like I didn't have it as bad as she did, you know what I mean? Like, and so like I can't really complain about it, you know. And so I think that it was like a hard, I don't want to say title, but like it just something, it was hard for me to like resonate with, I guess, because of that, because I felt like other people have had it harder.
Yeah. It's hard. I feel a similar way about like, because I was abused as a child, right? It's how I ended up in the system. Yeah. But I think I did a similar thing that you're talking about, which is like, there was a time where I felt like a victim, but what I understand is it looks different for different people. And like my childhood is pretty bad, and there's tons of bad things. But I've also met people that have gone through maybe less bad things in terms of severity, but they were also abused. Like I've met people that didn't go to foster care. So when they talk to me, they're like, "Oh, well, mine was never that bad." Yeah. And I'm like, "Yeah, it was, dude. You just like you just grew up with those fucked up parents." You know what I mean? Like, but it still hurts. Like it's still like similar. It looks different, but you're allowed. It's the same thing with like recovery. Like, you know what I mean? And I've talked about this in the podcast in the past. Like, I struggle with that too, because I refer to myself as someone that's in recovery, but I'm not in recovery the way that someone who's been to a 12-step program, you know what I mean? You know what I mean? Like I do drink and I do things, you know what I mean? And so it's like, I don't want to disrespect the people that don't, but I understand that I have a history of going to rehab. I have a history of these things. Like, I mean, I have a history of being suicidal. I have a history of suicide attempts. And I need to honor those feelings and understand that that's the way it looks for me. And I see things differently, but also still honor those people the way that you honor the way that you have been and the things that you've been through. But you can also honor and understand someone that's been through more than you, and the same exact respect and responsibility and compassion for someone that's been through less than you, because it still hurts, right? Yeah. Like it's still a lot to go through. Yeah. And so I think that it's important that you speak about things like that, because I think people need to know. I think people already admire you. But I also think that when people hear things like that, they're going to go, what? If I had to guess, they're going to go, what? Yeah. Like, Laura, that girl was like laughing at my party like 3 weeks ago. Like, I know that girl. Like, but it feels comfortable. Like, it feels good to know that people feel similar things. You know what I mean? And I've talked about this with you, and I haven't talked about it publicly, but I'll touch on it a little bit. This isn't, the feeling is similar, right? This isn't the same scenario as you. But I've always talked about Yvonne, who's my adoptive mom. And she went through a phase where she wanted to be the best mom. And what's the hate about that, right? Who doesn't want to be the best mom? But there's a level. There's a level of like, hey, like she was very strict, and she was very this, and she had all the right things. You will not steal. You will not lie. You will not, these are all things that are in the Bible, right? Yeah. But it's like, damn, like we were people. There was a point in our relationship. We didn't have the best relationship. There's a point in my relationship where I found out through other people mistakes she had made, and it made me happy. I know that sounds bad, but it made me go like, oh my God, she's not perfect. And now my crazy expectation of I can only be around her if I'm perfect, it goes down a little bit, and I understand that I'm missing out on a really cool relationship. So did she. There's plenty of things that she could have done. Yeah. And so it's like, it's a good thing. It really is. And then she's done it in the past few years where she's told me about mistakes she's made, or she's been vulnerable. And now we have a decent relationship. We have a really good relationship, but it's not to where I would want it to be. And I think she would agree, right? Which is why I feel comfortable saying this. But my point of saying it is that it will be at that place. We're on exactly the road we need to be on to get there. Yeah. And I appreciate that. The moral is sometimes being vulnerable and saying things that are hurtful, or saying things that have hurt you, or that you're worried about being judged about, the same way she was, the same way I'm sure you were at some point. Sometimes it opens up the door for some of the greatest relationships in the entire world. And I think that you deserve and earn those relationships, and I think you will have them. And I think that you inspire me to talk about stuff. And you are the best partner I could ever have. And I told you this last week, I wouldn't want to be quarantined with anyone else except for you.
Well, thank you for that. Yeah, and I think, like, you're right. Like, I feel like I'm stepping into this new place in my life where, like, I want to help people or empower people that, like, are or have been in the situation that I have, because I feel like, you know, there's a lot. And I don't know, like, I think that, like, honoring it for me has helped me a lot. I'm still getting there, I think, like, feeling like, okay, like, this did happen, like, you know, you're strong for it, and, like, all of that. It's easier for me to kind of be like, this will help other people, so, like, let me focus on that. Or, like, wow, like, I had some really good family, and I had some really good friends that, like, didn't turn their back on me during that time. Yeah. And so it's like, it's comfortable for me to, like, or it's comfortable and natural for me to honor that. And it's been harder for me to, like, honor myself for, like, going through that. But I think that is a step to being able to help people.
Yeah.
Because I think people can sense that.
Well, I think people will be like that. Well, that's what pain looks like. Pain doesn't always look like the sad guy or girl in the dark room with their hair over their face, right? Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's really happy, like Robin Williams, you know what I mean, who committed suicide and been in some of the greatest comedy movies of all time, right? I think it's important that people know it looks different ways. And so I think that you're part of a bigger solution and stuff. And it's just a start. I never thought you'd talk about any of that. I really didn't. And I mean that in a good way, because I think it's a good, huge step that you're taking. And I think that you should be proud of yourself, for sure. Yeah, that's pretty much how I feel about it. And so I'm really glad that you talked about that. What, is there more that you want to talk about on that? Is there anything that you feel like you left out? Do you feel like people are understanding you, or do you feel like there's more to it or something? No?
Not that I can think of. I mean, I think that, yeah, just giving that, like I definitely am grateful that I was able to move past that in my life. I do feel that, like, you go through things, like, to make yourself stronger, you know. Mm-hmm. And I think that, like, there was many years that, like, I kind of wish that, like, that relationship didn't happen, but I feel like it like brought me to where, like, I needed to be. And so I think that, like, maybe that's a good message for people too, like, maybe not even it having to be like a situation of an abusive relationship, but just a relationship that you look back on and you're just like, oh, like, I hate that happened. I hate that I did that. But, like, being able to come to a place where you're able to, like, just acknowledge that person or that situation for happening in the way it did, and being grateful for, like, what growth you're able to get from it.
Where do you think you get that strength from? Like, if you had to give credit to either a person or a moment or a thing, where do you think, if someone's looking to channel that, right, where do you think you channeled, or where do you think that comes from?
Like the strength to move past it? Or
yeah,
like the
strength to do something different, or to want more, or whatever it was?
That's a good question. I think for me, I always, like, had an idea of how I wanted my life to end up, right? And so I think, like, I always wanted to, like, get married, and, like, I wanted to have kids, and, you know, I always pictured that, and I always envisioned that. And when I got into this relationship, like, I didn't want that because of how it was. Mm-hmm. And so, like, I felt like being married to that person would be, like, even more controlling, and I felt like it wouldn't be fair bringing kids into that situation, and so I couldn't see that either. And so I felt like I still want to be able to have, like, a marriage and kids, and it's not going to happen with this person. Like, and I think at the beginning I thought, like, well, maybe he'll change, like, he promises he will, but a few years into it, I think I started to realize, like, this is just, like, not going to happen. Like, this is just getting worse and worse. And so, like, something bad's going to happen to me, or, like, or I need to get out. So I think that was the point that so I think it was just kind of, like, harnessing, like, everything that I've always wanted in my life, and knowing that, like, I have to accept with what, like, I'm getting. Like, I could sit here and, like, or at that time I could have, like, believed, like, okay, like, he is going to change. And, like, even though, like, what's in front of me is that, like, things are just getting worse and worse, and, like, it's just going to get worse. And, like, so I think I always knew the facts. Like, I was always very inquisitive of, like, being like, okay, well, what happened with this? Or, like, trying to understand things. Mm. And so, like, I always kind of knew, like, this is the road I'm going on. And, like, if I want to stop it, I need to stop it. Like, I can't continue to keep going on. So I think maybe just really, like, thinking about what you want in your life, and, like, if you're in a situation, if it is a relationship or a job or whatever, and you can't see yourself getting to where you need to be there, then I think just making that choice to make peace with it and let it go.
Yeah.
And like when your fears come in where you're just like, okay, well, what if I never have this? Or like, what if this never happens for me? Then you just tell yourself, like, I don't know how this is going to happen, but it's going to happen.
Yeah. I think that most people would feel that, though. Mm-hmm. Like, most people would feel like, because you said it yourself. You're like, I kind of knew, is what you said. You're like, I kind of understood that this wasn't the person I was going to be with. Mm-hmm. And so I would assume that other people feel the same way. They kind of already know, but just don't know how to get out. Mm-hmm. I think there's a time factor in it. That's the main reason why when we started this conversation, or when we started the beginning of this second part of the conversation, was I stressed the part about you leaving and asking about massive action. Mm-hmm. Because I think that you just don't really know what to do or how to do it until you're in a place where you could think clearly. Mm-hmm. And so regardless of that, you admitted and said, I kind of always knew, but it wasn't until you got away and felt safe enough to go with those thoughts you already knew that you were able to take action, right? Yeah. And so it's the same thing as growing up as a kid, and I hate to relate the two. They're the same emotionally, but they're not the same, right? Mm-hmm. It's different. But growing up in a home where I thought that was just my life. Like, this is just my life now. Mm-hmm. But knowing I didn't want it to be, kind of similar to what you said. Mm-hmm. Like, I know that I don't want to live in this family. I know that I don't want to be my parents when I grow up. I know that I want to be nicer than them. I don't know how to. I know I want that. And I think it's like, get out. And that, literally, and I literally mean that. And this is my advice to anyone. I've been in an abusive relationship, by the way, the other way around. I wasn't physically being abused, but I've been with a girl that was emotionally fucked up, like abusive in all the other ways. If this person was bigger than me, they probably would have beat me up. But it's like, I know kind of what it feels like the other way around. Never exactly. I'll never know exactly what that feels like. But I know what it's like to not be appreciated in a relationship. And I know what it's like to want to be out of a relationship that you feel like you can't get out of. And I know what that's like in a family setting too. And that's my advice to people is get out. Because there's zero amount of help. I love my mom, right? We don't get along. I've literally said I love my mom and I hate my mom in the same sentence and meant both of them. I do. I don't like her. I hate some of the things she's done, but I love her. That's how it is. You can be that way. You know what I mean? That's allowed. What I'm saying, because I'm not in that situation, I can figure that out. But when you're in a situation where you feel like there's more you can do, there's something I can do for this family, there's something I can do to save my mom, or something I can do to save my brother, my sister, whoever, you're just not going to make the right choices. You're just going to keep this cycle, right? You got to get out. You got to leave. And when I was a kid, I ran away. No ambitions. Everyone always asks me that. Did you always know that because I work a decent job, I'm helpful, I work in my community, I'm a good friend, I have good advice, I would like to say. And everyone's like, did you always? No, never. I just wanted to get out. I just wanted to, I want to be loved. And I wanted a hot meal, and I wanted to not be made fun of at school. That's it. And I wish that I can say, like, I always knew, didn't know anything. Just, I knew that it wasn't working. And I'm pretty sure someone in a relationship like you were in, or someone else kind of knows that same thing. Yeah. Your intuition is right. Get out. Exactly what you did, which is move away. There's nothing. I don't care what anyone says. There's nothing cowardly, wrong, whatever word people want to attach to it. You have to get out. You have to leave. You have to get out of there. Yeah. And then when you can think clearly, you make the best decision to get yourself in a healthy position. And then later on in life, when you build up the courage and resiliency to deal with those things, you come back and you help people in similar positions. But you can't skip those steps. And so you have to get out. You cannot stay in that relationship and fix it. You have to get out and then see what you're capable of doing from that standpoint. It's almost like trying to teach someone not to drown while you're both drowning. You know what I mean? Like, you can't save anyone if you're both drowning. You got to get out. You know what I mean? You got to figure something out. You got to get out. That way you can grab the orange floaty thing and throw it in. You know what I mean? Yeah. You can't help someone if you're also drowning. You're just going to drag each other down. You got to get out. You can make better decisions. And that's scary, because what does that mean? In a drowning situation, what does that mean? You're leaving the person drowning. It's scary, right? Yeah. And it feels responsible. It feels like, how dare I leave someone here drowning? Mm-hmm. But in reality, you got to take that tough step and get out of there so you can give more options to help that person. You just have to. And that's my version of it. I think you did that, and I think you're doing it now, and I think you will do even more in the future. I think I've done that in different ways. We both have, and there are people that listen, they want to know those things, I think. And I think that it's important to know that you don't have to have all the answers. You don't have to have all the resources. Just get away. Get away from that person. Get out. Yeah. Things will become clearer. things will make more sense. Things will feel better when you get out of there.
Yeah, definitely. And I feel like for me, I was really lucky to have a lot of support. Like I had a really good support system from my friends. You know, I think that like I definitely made it seem easier than it was because that's just my personality. You know, like I'm very like upbeat and you know things like that. And I think like my work too. Like I think about when you were talking, I was thinking about my work at the time and just how things kind of like lined up. But like during that time, I was working at a restaurant, and the owner had just maybe like a few years before lost his sister from domestic violence. And I actually got hired on that job. I had like no experience as a server, but I got hired on because I look like her. It's kind of weird like talking about it now. Later on, I didn't know that at the time, but later on
they ended up telling you,
yeah,
hey,
like,
you remind us of her.
Yeah, and like we had a good feeling about you, like, you know, so that's why we hired you. So they knew when it was happening that like, you know, I would go to work and they would see things, you know, and so they knew. And I remember like the owner, he had a conversation with me and he was just like, hey, like if you leave, like you'll have your job when you come back, like just leave. And so I'm just like so grateful because.
What do you mean leave? Like leave the job, or you're referring
like,
to that relationship?
Oh, because the opportunity, like my family was like, hey, come to Montana and stuff like that. And so like.
So your job was saying if you move away.
Yeah, like you can come back and you'll have a job. Like you'll be fine.
Did they knew about this relationship?
Yeah. And he actually like brought it up to me. Like, I don't know if I brought it up to him that like there was the opportunity for me to move, or if he just before that told me like, hey, like if you ever need to leave, like you'll have a job when you come back. So just leave. Like if you need to move, just go. And so I think whenever my parents came down and they kind of saw how things were going, they were like, you know, you need to come, like you should come. And my boss at the time was just like super supportive, and I talked to him about it and he was like, yeah, like you need to go, like you need to do what's good for you, and trust me, we'll be here when you come back. And so that kind of gave me like a lot of confidence, I guess, because I was like, okay, like, and I don't know how it would be for somebody that like doesn't have that or like didn't have that at that time, like somebody that's like, hey, I'm gonna lose my job, like, or I don't have family that I can move with. And their option is to go to a shelter, or like, you know, I did have some friends that like did stop talking to me during that time. Like I was grateful that I had most of my friends that continue to support me. But I did have some friends that chose not to, and I was hurt about it at the time, but now I feel like I understand and I don't have hurt feelings about it. But if I would have had no friends, like I feel like I would have probably been in a really hard spot. So I guess what I'm saying is that like support is crucial in that situation.
So you're mostly saying that for the people that know someone that's in an abusive relationship,
Yeah.
right? Because it's not the person being abused's job to create the support system. It's the people around them. It's important to remind them to step up to be the support system for the person. So, correct me if I'm wrong, it sounds like you're saying if you know someone that's in an abusive relationship, support them and stand up and don't leave them, even if they don't always make the right choices, right? Like a lot of times doesn't happen in abusive relationships. There's a lot of bad choices that seem like you're turning your back on friends, family sometimes. I'm not saying it's what happened with you, but it's pretty common. So you're saying stick by those people because it helped you, it worked for you. Even your boss saying, hey, you have even something small like that. Hey, if you need to get away from this relationship, when you come back, you got a job still. So you're saying that it's important for people to support and be available for someone that they know is in an abusive relationship, right?
Yeah, definitely. I feel like there's definitely like a annoyance factor sometimes, I feel, where like people are just like, why can't you just leave? Or like, you know, it's so simple. Like if somebody's not treating you good, then you just leave. And I used to be like that. Like I hate
to other people.
Yeah, like before that relationship, I'm like, it's so simple. Like there's so many guys out there. Like pick one. There's so many, you know. But like when you get caught in that, and somebody is like really messing with you psychologically, like it's rough. And I feel like I'm very strong-minded, and I have that kind of type of personality where like it's hard for people to overpower me, I guess, in some way. And I feel like it happened to me. Like it can happen to anybody.
Yeah. Yeah.
Brighter topics.
No, you're. I'm just happy that you talked about it. I really am. Yeah. I don't know if there's a way to give you all the props, if you want to call them, that you truly deserve. But I think that if we do a podcast in the future, or when we do one, I think it'd be a good, like, there's opportunities there for you, like to like talk about certain things that you think are relevant, for sure. Yeah. But I think that there isn't enough words, I think, to express like how cool it is, and I admire that. I really do, and I get confused a lot as someone who sets a tone, or someone that wants to be admired. I know that that's one of my needs. We've talked about that in counseling and stuff. It's like it is, but it means even more to me when I can admire someone, and I say that as a compliment, because I don't admire a lot of people. I'm not easily admired. I don't like celebrities that I think are cool. I'm not that guy. Like, I'm not like, oh my God, like I'm not like a fanboy. Like, when I admire someone, I fucking admire them. Like, I really, really do. And so it's rare. And so that's what I'm trying to tell you, is like, I truly, 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 truly do admire that about you. And I look up to that. And I think it's really cool that you did that. You're welcome. Yeah. Could I still cheat on you online later on those websites? I'm just kidding.
Nope.
Damn it.
I have no tolerance. You
mean I listen to that whole story? You're not even going to let me cheat?
As long as you let me go online with you.
We'll catfish someone? I think we should reverse catfish someone.
What do you mean? What would that even mean?
I think... All right. Reverse catfish. It's where you put up a not so attractive photo. Instead of finding an attractive person and pretending to be attractive, you find, since you're already attractive, you should find someone that's not so attractive and then put up that picture and see if you can get someone. And then you reverse catfish them, where you go like, hey, I have something to tell you. I'm not actually this girl. And then you show your real face. And it's like, I just wanted to meet. Kind of like in the movie where
become like a throuple? Is that what you're saying?
No, I wouldn't be involved in this at all. You would have, like, this would be a side thing. You can't let me know. I'll get super jealous. There was an old movie, like a
little hobby, quarantine hobby.
Do you remember the Princess Diaries, where it's like, was it the princess or something? There was one where like the dude comes in, maybe it was the prince in, I don't remember. It's one of those movies, but he's like secretly a prince, but he pretends just to be some like college kid because he doesn't want. And at the end of the movie, it's like, I'm really a prince, and it goes like, what? That means I'm a princess. Like,
really?
It's like, yeah.
I never seen that movie.
Maybe it's reverse catfishing. That's what I'm saying. We should do that. We should. All right, we'll do it as a couple then, but not. It has to be one profile. Either me pretending to be like a less attractive guy, or you pretending to be a less. And then
I think we should just be like a couple looking for our third mate.
I feel like that automatically makes it like more attractive to people, knowing that they get two. Like, two ugly people equal one like attractive person.
But if you're me, there's beauty in everybody. So
I think. Yeah, I don't know. We should reverse catfish someone. I think that'd be cool.
That would be kind of funny.
I think it's getting to the point where we should wrap it up a little bit. It's pretty late. But I appreciate our conversation. I've had a lot of fun. How do you feel so far? First ever podcast?
I think it was good.
Yeah, I think so too. So the end of it is the anonymous confession. I picked out one, and
you didn't tell me about it?
No. And I read it and I didn't really process it. Ricky always yells at me because she's like, you get to think about it first. So now I try not to think about it.
Okay.
Not that I did before. But I'll read you the anonymous confession. We'll kind of talk about it, and then we'll just wrap this up. You ready?
Sure.
Okay. Damn, it's kind of a serious one. We can make it whatever it means to you, okay? Anonymous confession says, I've been in a relationship for over 2 years, and while I love my partner, their mental illness makes them very emotionally distant. I don't blame them for this, but it makes it difficult, as we will often go weeks or months without speaking. Even though we live within a 10-minute walk. They don't live together? This is like a high school couple then, huh? Yeah. Even though we live within a 10-minute walk, I would feel bad breaking up with them because of something they can't control. So I find myself hoping they'll break up with me just so I don't have to be the bad guy. So this is a guy. Or stay in a relationship I'm not happy with.
So he's wanting her to break up with him.
He's saying I'm in this relationship with someone who suffers with mental illness. They live 10 minutes away. I can't break up with them because they're mentally ill and that'd be fucked up. But I sometimes wish they would break up with me. That way I don't have to deal with it. This is just so I don't have to be the bad guy or stay in a relationship I'm not happy with. This is actually pretty interesting because we associate mental illness with understanding, which we should be, right? And we both agree as working in the fields that we do, we agree that you should take this. But think about this. Try to take it seriously. In a relationship, this is a guy in a relationship with a girl. The girl has mental illness and he's like, fuck, I can't deal with this shit. I want out, but I can't get out for that reason. So I just hope she breaks up with me. What advice would you give that guy?
Well, I think first I would, kind of like talk to that person and see, like, because I do believe, like, back with the energy, like, yeah, obviously if somebody has like a mental illness, I've been someone sometimes like where if I see the good in that person, I don't know why, but that's all I ever see, right? And then there's other people that are like, oh, but this person's like crazy or they did this, and I'm like, really? Like, with me, they're fine, because I'm just focused on all their good qualities rather than worrying about maybe qualities that like maybe I don't find as desirable, right?
Yeah.
So that would be probably my first advice to that person is like, do you feel like you can come to a place where you can just focus on all of the good in her? And is that enough for you? And if you do that, or if you've already done that and you come to a point where you just are ready to move on, then you should move on. Because by staying with her, you're not only unhappy, but you're also not allowing her to be in a relationship with somebody who might be able to support her and her mental illness.
Yeah, I think this is totally the guy's fault in this relationship. This is how I feel about it. That's when I interpret it. Here's what I hear. I hear a guy that's with a girl that he doesn't want to be with, regardless of her mental state. And he's hoping she will do something to sabotage it that way. Here's what that tells me is that you're kind of weak and you're unable to acknowledge the fact that you're uncomfortable with something. And here's my opinion on working with someone that has mental illness. A person with mental illness can function as a normal person if they're getting treatment or on medication. Regular, and we'll use bipolar. It's a big one that's pretty common, right? If you're dating someone that's bipolar, you're dating a regular ass person who happens to be bipolar. It's a chemical imbalance. You know what else is also a chemical imbalance? Anger, thyroid issues. You know what I mean? These are all things, right? But no one cares about it. My point is, with medication treatment, both or one of the two, that's a regular person. The same way someone that's epileptic can take their medicine and function as a normal human being, right? So people that have mental health disorders, they're regular people. And if this person is saying their mental health is causing issues in our relationship, if you care about that person, then help them with their mental health. It shouldn't be annoying. You knew what you got into when you got with this person. Whether they're diagnosed or not, you kind of know. You kind of know. And it's what you signed up for. And if you're going to back out, it better be for some bigger reason than that. That's just my opinion on this. Now, you're right when you said this girl deserves to be happy. I think she does. He's wasting her time. They're wasting each other's time in a weird way. But I don't know if I was giving advice to this guy, I would say, what's going on with her? What mental health condition does she have? Because there isn't one single one that I've ever heard of that's a deal breaker, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Even schizophrenia, even multiple personality disorder, these can all be treated.
Yeah.
All these things, they're all treatable. And as someone who watches Dr. Phil like religiously now, I've seen there's an episode where a dude thinks he's Batman. Did you ever heard that? I'll show you that one.
Yeah.
If a guy can think he's Batman, they ended up together. Their fiance. They showed like a thing a year later. They had them back on the show, and he was like, "Yeah, it turns out I'm not Batman."
Yeah. He really.
I sold my suit, and they got married, and they're happy as hell.
Yeah.
If a girl can look at a guy or anyone who thinks they're Batman and take you on a show and stick by your side and help you get treatment to where you can sell the Batman suit, then you can put up with this. That's a situation that is bonkers in my head, and they figured it out.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can always figure it out. There's always a solution. There's always a solution because there's people without mental illness that you shouldn't be with, right?
Yeah.
For other reasons that have nothing to do with it. So a person with mental illness, you should be compassionate, understanding, and try to get them help. If they're getting help, they're functioning as a regular human being, and they're still making bad decisions, then you cannot be in a relationship with them because of their personal decisions, right? They're real ones. And that's okay.
Yeah, definitely.
But that's the advice I would give this person. Like, have you tried to help? Did you even ask questions? Maybe there's some medicine out there that can help this person.
True. And I think, like, yeah, the stigma of, like, mental health is getting better, but still pretty...
It's pretty bad.
Yeah, it is really bad.
Yeah.
So.
And it's definitely a place where people... It's just, we're all just people. We're all... I can give everyone... If I was a diagnoser, everyone could have something, right? Everyone... What do? You got upset? Okay. It was a sporadic bipolar. Yeah. I could give it something out to everyone, right?
Yeah. It's just like a title, right?
It's a title. You know, it's all it is. It's really something. But let's not do that. I'm not saying we should do that. Let's not do that and understand that some people live with different things. A person with a diagnosis is just a person that's figured it out.
Yeah.
If anything, that's better because they now have an idea of what to work on as opposed to some clueless asshole at the bar who's treating women like shit, who's never been diagnosed with anything, but is misogynistic and an abuser or whatever he is. You know what I mean? But nobody looks at that guy different because he hasn't been labeled yet. So I agree. There is a bad stigma to it, and I hope that it leaves. And I think that we need to stop treating people with disorders, disabilities, diagnoses, put them all together, whatever you want to call it. They're just people with something they figured out, as opposed to people with things they haven't figured out yet.
Yeah.
But we're all people.
Yeah, and I feel like a lot of the time, I believe that things are very curable, you know, and managed. So, like, it's not something that's like a forever, like, life sentence, you know?
Yeah.
Like, if it's managed, then that's fine, you know?
Yeah. I think that's super duper important. I think we're all learning that with the corona, too.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, look at all these celebrities and basketball players that have come out and said, like, hey, I tested positive for corona. And there's no cure. And we all, like, wish the best for them. You know what I mean? So it shouldn't be any different that someone that comes out and says, hey, it turns out I have like depression.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, well, like, who are they? Are they stupid? They're emo? Whatever stupid name they give them. Nope. It's a regular person that didn't choose anything and is working on stuff.
Yeah.
And so I agree with what you said. And I think that would be the advice I'd give this person is talk to your person and figure it out. And if there is this instance where you're wasting each other's time, then that will be the moment where you get to make that call.
Yeah. And I mean, I think for him too, like, maybe he doesn't have the capacity to do that, and that's okay. But, like, knowing and owning up to that, like, hey, I'm really care about this person, but, like, I don't want this, or I don't want to be in a situation with somebody that does struggle with this.
Yeah.
It's nothing personal against that person, but it's more so being able to identify that this is something I can't handle, and so allowing that person to move on and find somebody that can handle it.
Yeah. That's the final thing, right? Is not stringing someone along when you've kind of already decided in your head it's not going to work out. If you're saying, I hope they break it off so I don't have to, that's why I said it's weak. That's why I said that. That's a weak move. You should never, regardless of mental health or anything, if that's your thought, I hope they end it before I have to, you're weak. And you just refuse to man up or woman up if you're a woman and just call it off and be honest. If you're waiting for the other person to mess up, I think that's a little messed up.
Yeah, for sure.
So cut it out, mofo, whoever you are, you anonymous son of a... All right. That was a really good podcast. It's definitely one of the longer ones. I'm excited to see how long it took. Any last things you want to say?
No.
We're here in quarantine, having you in our spare bedroom on this studio platform.
I'm never in this room, so yeah.
If there's still a coronavirus and we're not allowed to hang out, we might have to do another one soon. Either way, we'll do another one for sure. But I appreciate you taking the time to chill and talk. I think we got a lot out. I love you. Don't forget, you told me I can talk to girls online. No, I'm just kidding. I love you, babe.
Love you
Call
too.
it quits?
Call it quits.
Okay. I love you.
Love you.
And I'm out. Damn, we need like an outro song. All right, we're done.
Add one.
We're done.